Chapter 1061, North Brocade River King II. Ma Yashui certainly recognized Li Minggong, but this woman was a nobody. She had beaten Li Minggong into a sorry state within 20 exchanges and dismissed her ever since. But who would have thought these feather-like flames would sting her face at the slightest touch? Already injured by heavenly radiance, her mana was still unstable. Meanwhile, Li Minggong now wielded the newly acquired six-cornered scarlet flame lamp, bolstered by Purifeather radiant fire, and was pressing her so hard she could scarcely breathe. More terrifying still, Li Chenghui was looming behind Li Minggong. Li Minggong alone was enough trouble, let alone Li Chenghui watching like a tiger. Ma Yashui could only cry out, "Quickly, come out of the formation and save me." The formation was Mang Huazi's, and it had been easy enough for Ma Yashui to leave, but returning was not so simple. Hearing her plea, those inside the formation hesitated. "Li Xiaowei is outside too. If we step out, it will be walking to our deaths." The flaws of Hidden Cloud Cave's ragtag band were once again laid bare. Neither of the two inside dared to move. Ma Yashui's fury boiled over, and she shouted harshly, "Staying in the formation is no different from waiting here to die." Only then did someone ride the wind out, shouting as they came to help. Buzhai, ever the perceptive elder, promptly raised his Dharma artifact to assist. Li Chenghui calmly extended one hand, and the six-fold profound thunder punishment tokens floated into the air, circling his wrist as they released blazing thunderlight. When Yang reaches its apex, 6 thunders are born. While Buzhai held one foe back, Li Chenghui unleashed silver-white lightning that crashed down upon another. The devil cultivator did not even manage a word, only letting out a blood-curdling scream as black miasma poured from his body. Though Li Chenghui's cultivation could not match that of Li Qingheng in her prime, his mastery of thunder arts was only a notch beneath hers. This single bolt nearly knocked his opponent unconscious. Li Qingheng had fine talent in cultivation and a passion for the spear, but she was never accomplished in the arts of spellcraft. Li Chenghui was the opposite. His cultivation method was the more complete cloud thunder inquiry technique, and he had trained in the falling water, rising storms of the eastern sea since birth. By the time he reached Foundation Establishment Realm, the Li family was already a great family, with far superior resources in spell arts. Most crucial of all, the secret techniques of the Tao of thunder steering and cloud dwelling, the purple talisman origin light secret technique that Li Qingheng had spent her life researching, had all been left within the clan. Thus, he cut an awe-inspiring figure with a Dharma artifact in hand. He needed only 20 exchanges to leave the devil cultivator half-dead. Buzhai watched with burning eyes and a swelling heart. Excellent, excellent. The rise of the Li family is clear. With just Li Chenghui, they already have such might, and they still have Li Xiaowei besides. The old man had cultivated for many years, and his eyes were keen. He saw at once that Li Chenghui's six-fold profound thunder punishment tokens were far stronger than the scarlet flame lamp. Li Minggong relied on her artifact's power, but Li Chenghui did not. Li Chenghui had suppressed his foe within a few dozen exchanges, while Li Minggong held Ma Yashui firmly at bay. She knew the woman was cunning and had only summoned her companions in hopes of creating a chance to escape, so she remained vigilant and didn't let her slip away. When Li Xiaowei finished suppressing Mang Huazi and rode light toward them, the woman finally realized there was no path left to escape. She whispered, "Your esteemed family suppresses the water tribes like this, showing no regard for the North Brocade River King. Yet my sect master has already paid respects before the Taoist master, and the two sides have reconciled. Why then must you strike at me?" She feigned ignorance while knowing full well why, so Li Xiaowei did not answer. He only felt the dampness in the air as the white river stream beneath his feet began to swell and surge. He folded his arms and waited. Li Chenghui also noticed, his eyes narrowing, while Buzhai exclaimed in alarm, "It's the North Brocade River King." The surface of the stream erupted like a waterfall, sending white spray shooting skyward. A jade-blue chariot burst forth from the shimmering waves. 2 rows of shrimp soldiers and crab generals rode the current, escorting it from both ends. The waters surged all the way to the mountain's foot. Mang Huazi, pinned to the ground, could not move and thus did not react. Ma Yashui, however, let out a breath of relief. Though still surrounded by enemies and not daring to laugh aloud, she sneered in her heart, "Now things can't possibly be explained away. My hidden cloud cave stands together with Mang Huazi, and it's very clear who's right and who's wrong." A hunchbacked elder in an ink-black robe, cradling a strange water conch in his hands, stood on top of the chariot. The chariot rode the current down to the mountain's base, and the old man croaked, "I do not know which great lord of the mountains you are, but even if this little serpent spoiled your mood, there was no need to go this far." Though his words were polite, his face was ugly. Were it not for Li Xiaowei's imposing presence, he might not have bothered with even this courtesy. Ma Yashui quickly called out, "My lord, these are the troops of the Li family. They seek to kill Mang Huazi without cause." Li Minggong gritted her teeth, her flames blazing fiercer still. But from within the chariot came a clear, cold voice, "Shui Zhao, there is no need to speak further." The black-robed elder was clearly Shui Zhao. The crystal curtain rose, and a man descended from the chariot. He was tall, clad in a short jacket of stone-blue brocade, with a white fur cloak embroidered with a green seed draped over his shoulders. Fine, dense blue-green scales, radiating an otherworldly, domineering aura, were faintly visible around his neck. The instant he revealed himself, Li Xiaowei recognized him at once. "So it's you." The suspicion Li Xiaowei had harbored was finally confirmed. His heart eased, and he laughed inwardly. Li Xiaowei had once been entertained by the dragon's son Ding Jiao and drank wine in his carriage. The entertainment had been the water tribes singing and dancing, but also the battles of noble-blooded beasts. One was a treasure-scaled fairy beast, while the other was a jade-necked flood dragon. They had been forced to fight like dogs for Ding Jiao's amusement, tearing into each other without restraint. The North Brocade River King was none other than that very jade-necked flood dragon. Ding Jiao had even asked his opinion on the ever-flowing converging water profound light. Li Xiaowei had given his assessment, which had left him with a deep impression of this spell art. When he had heard old say earlier that the North Brocade River King practiced the converging water Dao and wielded a profound light that bewitched the mind and turned men to blood water, the association had been immediate. Now, seeing him in person, Li Xiaowei knew his guess had been right. Outwardly his expression did not change, but inwardly he sneered. "I heard he is much favored by the Dragon Sun, to the point where whenever the Dragon Sun passes the White Sea Stream, he even sends someone to summon him. And yet, how different is that from a dog being summoned to heal?" Very good, very good. While Li Xiaowei recognized the jade-necked flood dragon, the North Brocade River King swept his gaze over the scene with great authority. His sharp eyes and handsome features were dark with displeasure until they landed on Li Xiaowei's face. In the space of a heartbeat, his expression shifted from calm to shock to abject terror. The jade-necked flood dragon immediately controlled the waters and hurried forward under everyone's gaze. He stopped before Li Xiaowei, hastily bowing with clasped hands as he said respectfully, "Greetings, great king. The lesser demon below was ignorant and dared to offend your exalted self. This unworthy one is ashamed and terrified beyond measure. I shall kill that creature at once and prepare serpent stew for you." Turning, the jade-necked flood dragon's eyes swept over Mang Huazi with icy loathing, as though the sight of him was something abominable. He gave a cold order, "Shui Zhao, kill him at once." Chapter 1062, Settling Floating Cloud Cave I. The words of the North Brocade River King left everyone stunned. The six-cornered scarlet flame lamp in Li Minggong's hand trembled, its flames dimming slightly. Her eyes brightened as realization dawned in her heart, and she let out a breath of relief. "I thought the North Brocade River King looked so imposing, and that we would need some sort of negotiation since he's a guest of the Dragon Sun. But it turned out to be so easy." The two devil cultivators underground were barely hanging onto their lives, captured in Buzhe's grip and unable to move. The old man's face flushed red in disbelief. Well-traveled and experienced, he secretly sensed that something was off. This was not the manner one would use facing a Purple Mansion realm immortal family. Even if he was facing Zheajing himself, the North Brocade River King would not have been so deferential. No wonder Li Chenghui showed no fear. "I thought this man had merely lost his caution." The two men had different expressions, but even Li Chenghui was surprised. The brows of the young man in silver armor and black robes furrowed. Judging by this, the North Brocade River King being valued by the Dragon Sun might not be true. Yet no matter how startled they were, none could compare to Ma Yashui. The Taoist nun's face had gone pale down to her neck. The spell in her hands scattered, and Li Minggong's blazing fire scorched several blackened patches on her Dharma robe. The strength in her hands clearly weakened. "Your subordinate obeys." The old demon Shui Zhao hurriedly commanded the waters and descended. Shui Zhao's true body was most likely a black soft-shelled turtle, making him a true steward of the water mansion. When he first heard the North Brocade River King say, "No need to say more," he had put on a cold expression. But then his own master immediately lowered his head and did not even dare raise it again. The vast disparity frightened Shui Zhao so much that he began doubting himself instead. So "no need to say more" was meant in this way. Those cold words were for Mang Huazi. It was my own eyes that failed me. Fortunately, he had not committed much offense earlier. He quickly flew down from the carriage, lifted his sleeve, stomped on Meng Huazi's tongue and cursed, "You slimy mudfish, how dare you swagger about under my king's name and cheat others?" The old soft-shelled turtle was a refined demon, so his scolding was soft and weak. He simply raised his palm to strike Meng Huazi on the head, but the great halberd shifted slightly. Heavenly light reflected off it, and Li Xiaowei's voice came from afar. "There is no need to trouble yourself." The old turtle withdrew his hand as if scalded. Hierarchy was strict among demons, and it was even more so among the Dragon Clan. Servants of the Dragon Clan might appear glorious before outsiders, but only they knew the bitterness behind their position. His face dripping with cold sweat, the old turtle knelt beside the halberd, in silent attendance. The North Brocade River King's legs grew even weaker. None present understood the weight of the man before them better than him. The dragon's son Dingjiao had once feasted with him, and his own life-and-death battle with the treasure-scaled fairy beast of the Scarlet Pristine Sea had been nothing more than entertainment. Though he had tried to gild his reputation and borrow strength from it, everything would all shatter at a single poke from this figure. This demonic creature looked majestic, yet his manner was exceedingly humble as he said respectfully, "I, the humble demon Ying Hebai, serve as the leader of the Three Streams Water Clan. Now that my lord has arrived, please give your orders as you see fit." Ying Hebai braced himself and stood, unsure of how Li Xiaowei might expose him. He exhaled quietly, silently preparing for the loss of face. The jade-necked flood dragon was hesitating, but Li Xiaowei already understood him. The flood dragon had borrowed Dingjiao's reputation to bluff others, but was that not the same for himself? Dingjiao had granted him and White Banyan a measure of respect, but his true intentions still remained difficult to guess. If not for Dingjiao, Ying Hebai would never have shown the Li family even a shred of courtesy. Thus, Li Xiaowei chose not to expose him and said with his hands clasped behind his back, "So it is you. We once met years ago. I did not expect to find you serving here. Yes. I was fortunate to behold my lord's countenance, and I dare not forget it to this day." Ying Hebai froze for a moment, then breathed easier. He understood that the other was sparing him some dignity. Grateful yet uncertain how to respond, he suddenly heard a faint voice in his ear. "The matter of that day with Dingjiao is a secret. Do not reveal my identity, nor should you mention it." Li Xiaowei had no desire for the Dragon Clan to think he was relying on Dingjiao's name to act. The other was, after all, a dragon. He could lean on that connection lightly, but he could not appear to flaunt it like a fox borrowing a tiger's might. Offending that dragon would bring no end of trouble. Ying Hebai quickly realized it was a transmission of mana. He was now caught in a bind. He dared not fawn too much, yet feared offending him, so he said respectfully, "May I invite all of you to my residence for a while?" Meng Huazi had mentioned earlier that the Bay capital Immortal Dao and the North Brocade River King Ying Hebai had discussed many plans together. Since they were strangers in this land, they would surely need to converse with Ying Hebai. Li Xiaowei had no fear of him causing harm. But Mayo Shui and the others were only just captured, and even Hidden Cloud Cave might not know, much less the Bay capital Immortal Dao. Not wanting to lose the initiative, Li Xiaowei said, "I still have important matters to handle here and cannot leave for the time being." "No problem, no problem." Ying Hebai replied respectfully, "This humble demon will wait by the river." From the look of the jade-necked flood dragon, he intended to wait for Li Xiaowei and the others at White River Stream. That was still too ostentatious. After some thought, Li Xiaowei spoke softly, "The North Brocade River King's invitation is an honor, and I should indeed visit. Once I finish the matters here, I will send someone over." "Yes." Hearing the displeasure in his tone, Ying Hebai immediately prepared to withdraw without pressing Li Xiaowei to his residence. Clearly relieved, he had Shui Zhao pull the carriage, offered apologies, and hastily made his way back into the river. Once the Water Clan departed, Li Xiaowei finally turned to gaze down at Mayo Shui. She stood dazed within the blazing fire, struggling to resist as red and white goose feathers burned away at her mana. The six-cornered scarlet flame lamp of the Golden Feather sect was not adept at killing, but it excelled at trapping foes in radiant fire. It was a sinister tool, like a dull blade scraping bone bit by bit. Having lost the initiative and suffered injuries, Mayo Shui was trapped inside, unable to advance or retreat. As Li Xiaowei approached, her despair deepened, her expression growing ever more ferocious. Li Xiaowei said clearly, "Stop struggling, it is useless. Put away your Dharma artifact yourself, and spare me the trouble of taking you down." Having seen the North Brocade River King depart, Mayo Shui wondered for a moment if she could gamble everything in a desperate fight for survival. She had already steeled herself to abandon everything but her life. Yet with no true hope of escape, and seeing that Li Xiaowei bore no strong killing intent, her ruthless resolve softened. She lifted her brows and spoke aloud. "This humble woman greets my lord. I have long heard of your esteemed family's good name and admired it from afar. Yet I drifted through the mortal world in past years and stained myself with murky qi. I feared sullying your family's immortal reputation, and thus I dared not surrender." The two devil cultivators also raised their heads at her words. The cultivators of Hidden Cloud Cave were better than those of Floating Cloud Cave, yet 7 in 10 had touched unclean things. How the Li family dealt with them would almost decide the morale of the entire Hidden Cloud Cave going forward. Mayashui and the northern cultivators like her still held a few scruples. They did not go so far as the devil cultivators who slaughtered freely to advance their cultivation, yet they occasionally turned a blind eye and consumed blood qi and blood pills. When gravely wounded and near death, they did not shy from rice meat either. These people were, in truth, little different from the minor families such as the Yuan and Yu families. They could never reach the level of the Xiao or Li families, but they were still somewhat better than devil cultivators or the Eastern Seas cultivators. Mayashui was not foolish. The Li family would most likely target Hidden Cloud Cave next. Even if they did not, having her as a figurehead would still greatly weaken its morale. That was why she apprehensively asked, but Li Xiaowei remained silent. To her surprise, it was Li Minggong who spoke up. "Family head, fellow Taoist Mayashui has not committed too many killings. Blood pills are everywhere in Jiangnan, and it is normal to be stained with some murky qi." Chapter 1063, Settling Floating Cloud Cave II. Li Minggong's words made Mayashui look up in astonishment. She had scarcely met Li Minggong a few times, and had even fought and injured her once. Of all people, she never expected Li Minggong to plead on her behalf. Li Minggong, however, had no such thoughts. Hidden Cloud Cave was backed by the Baiyi capital Immortal Dao. Although the Li family had Li Xiaowei and Li Chenghui, their manpower was stretched thin. Even if they wanted to make a move, they would never wish to face a united Hidden Cloud Cave resisting to the last. Even if this must be reckoned with, it should be after the fact, never at this moment. Mayashui shows some womanly compassion. She is considered clean enough within Hidden Cloud Cave. If she is slain, everyone there would know that none could survive under my family's hand, thought Li Minggong. Now, Li Xiaowei finally had an excuse to relent. However, he was still thinking of striking Hidden Cloud Cave before they could react and catching them unprepared. Naturally, he could not risk killing Mayashui and alarming Taoist Wenhu. Thus he said in a deep voice, "Since my aunt vouches for you, I will spare your life for now. Put away your Dharma artifact." Mayashui hesitated for a moment before recalling the water sword in midair. Li Minggong's blazing fire dissipated a moment later. She hurried over to Li Xiaowei and clasped her hands with a trace of embarrassment. "I greet my lord." Li Xiaowei nodded. The two devil cultivators were still held in Buzhai's grasp. Judging by their cultivation of the Blood Dharma manual, they were the sort who had murdered to refine resentment and baleful qi. They had stumbled into Foundation Establishment realm by sheer chance. The demonic qi above their heads nearly pierced the sky. The Wenyi and Wenshan brothers, who managed the fire veins in the mountains, were at least orthodox cultivators of the Eastern Seas Devil Dao. By contrast, these two men had shallow foundations and were useless. Their sins were far too heavy. Li Xiaowei hardly spared them a glance and simply ordered, "Tie them up and hold them in the mountains. We will decide later." Mayashui watched with sorrow in her heart, silently thinking, "Who knows how I will be dealt with when the time comes? I can only take one step at a time." If that Baiyi capital Immortal Dao cultivator is truly at the mid-stage of the Purple Mansion realm, and Taoist Master Zheijing cannot overcome him, then I will have no way to survive. Her heart turned cold when she heard Li Xiaowei say casually, "You must also see that Hidden Cloud Cave is backed by Baiyi capital Immortal Dao. But having the support of the Purple Mansion realm is one matter, and being a Purple Mansion realm force in itself is another. For you to defect from a puppet like Hidden Cloud Cave to my family is hardly worth even Yi Hui's attention. But if you feign surrender, that would be leaping from the umbrella of the Purple Mansion realm to that of a mere Foundation Establishment realm power. Whatever the outcome, my family would be justified in killing you, and no one would protect you. Take care to weigh your actions, and do not bring ruin upon yourself." These words left Mayashui shaken, her heart trembling. She knew nothing of the struggles between the Purple Mansion realm cultivators. If she truly joined the Li family in the future, she would rejoice rather than worry about retribution. After hearing this, she dared not harbor resentment and quickly declared, I am blessed by your grace and will never harbor divided loyalties. Li Xiaowei cared little for what she thought. He still considered her to be deeply suspicious. He asked, how are the defensive formations of Hidden Cloud Cave arranged? Ma Yaoxui's mindset shifted swiftly, and she hurriedly replied, Hidden Cloud Cave holds 11 peaks and 12 Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators. 7 are guest cultivators recruited from overseas. They are hardly worth concern. They are weak and primarily rely on devil techniques. Of the remaining 5, excluding myself, Wenhu is the strongest. The other 3 each have their own backing. 2 of the more capable ones might perhaps resist someone on the level of the Azure Pond Peaks Master. This matched closely with the Li family's investigations. Hidden Cloud Cave was little more than a puppet, with many of its guest cultivators recruited from overseas by Bei capital Immortal Dao. In truth, its strength was not much greater than the Li family's. Li Xiaowei calculated silently, Wenhu will naturally be mine. The other 2 can be handled by Uncle Chenghui, Aunt Minggong, and Ma Yaoxui. But Buzhai cannot handle more than a few devil cultivators. Even with the White Ape and Siwei, they will not be able to deal with the rest. Let alone the formations. If Ma Yaoxui truly surrendered wholeheartedly, their top-tier combat strength would not be inferior to the enemy's. Still, Wenhu would not expect them to strike so suddenly. Careful planning against an unprepared foe might not end up in a simple one-to-one battle. So long as they seized the moment, they could certainly slaughter those devil cultivators. Does that Bei capital Immortal Dao figure possess a life-divine ability? And how have our Taoist master and Taoist master Changxi arranged matters? Seeing Li Xiaowei lost in thought, Ma Yaoxui quickly said, only the main mountain holds a Foundation Establishment Realm formation. The rest are of Qi Cultivation Realm and not worth worrying about. Wenhu himself is nowhere to be found. Li Xiaowei simply drew his halberd, sealed Mang Huazi's cultivation, and dragged him away. He summoned 2 lesser demons and instructed them, no matter who comes, say only that Mang Huazi is in seclusion and will see no one. The 2 lesser demons, having witnessed everything, were already terrified out of their wits. Crying out, grandfather, in fright, they quickly agreed. Li Xiaowei glanced into the distance and said, head straight for Floating Cloud Cave and drop these people off. Then continue north to join in Siwei and the others stationed at Hidden Cloud Cave. Zhaijing Mountain. Blossoms of the gardenia tree fell like rain under the bright light of the heavens as Li Ziming revealed himself. Before the desk sat an old man with hair as white as snow, brows tightly furrowed. Taoist Master Changxi was clearly burdened with troubles. The changes in Jiangnan's spiritual aura could not have escaped the old Taoist Master's notice. Being one who cultivated the divine ability of the earth virtue, he understood better than anyone its benefits and harms. Since 3 of his juniors were still in seclusion, encountering such matters left his spirit weary. Worse still, Kong Tingyun and the other 2 were in the midst of breaking through to the Purple Mansion realm. This was no ordinary seclusion and could not be moved. Otherwise, they could have been relocated from Jiangnan to another place. When Li Ziming appeared, the worries in Changxi's brows quickly eased, and he greeted him with a smile. My arrival was unexpected, Zhaijing. Please do not take offense. Li Ziming had been observing the situation in the great void over Jiangbei. When his divine sense stationed at Zhaijing Mountain was stirred, he had torn through the void to return and find that it was indeed Changxi. Li Ziming lifted a jade pot, poured tea for him, and sat opposite him with a smile. You have come at just the right time, Elder. I had been thinking of meeting you as well. Oh, Changxi raised his brows and looked up. He treated Li Ziming with the utmost courtesy, adopting a posture of attentive respect when Li Ziming said, Does Senior have any method for the ailment of a damaged Danshan? What are you saying? Changxi chuckled and shook his head. Do you still remember Taoist Master Kilao of Xuanmiao Temple? His cultivation is precisely in Treasure Earth, a path of tremendous nourishing power. Though not on par with Valley Water or Hornwood, it is more than sufficient to heal this injury. Chapter 1064 Sumian I, Treasure Earth. The Earth Virtue Dao lineage was one of the rarest lineages in the world, and Treasure Earth was almost unheard of. Changxi answered, Treasure Earth is one of the 5 Earth Virtues. It's a type of earth that nourishes plants and grain. It is also able to nurture both people and artifacts. It is precisely because of the abilities of this Dao lineage that Taoist Master Kilao had built many ties with cultivators from the north. Noticing that Li Ziming seemed to be reflecting on his words, Changxi spoke in a deep voice. In ancient times, the 2 soils proclaimed by the twin immortals of state and grain had nearly disappeared and were now rarely seen. Wu Earth and Gen Earth were still relatively common, but Treasure Earth was even rarer. It was only natural that Zhejiang would not have known of it. Li Ziming lifted his head, and Changxi continued, I had intended to introduce you to him, but now the timing is just right. Bring someone along and he can conveniently tend to their condition as well. Changxi had prepared 2 backup plans for Profound Peak Gate. One was the marriage tie with Xuanmiao Temple, bringing Taoist Master Qilao in as a supporter. The other was to have his direct descendant to be under Jingyi Mountain by the Eastern Sea. Li Ziming's request to have Ding Weizhang treated suited his intentions perfectly. Although Li Ziming felt that this Taoist Master Qilao of the Sumian Dao lineage sounded like a good ally to make, he still asked cautiously, what is his background? Which Dao lineage does he belong to? Does he have any notable origins? Changxi had long prepared for this line of questioning and replied, he was born in Zhao State and originally cultivated near Yan Mountain. He obtained a Dao lineage with some unknown opportunity. After that, he ventured to the Eastern Sea and cultivated among the waves until he attained the Dao. He is already 400 years old. The Taoist master values stability in all things in his old age. He forges ties with cultivators everywhere to ensure the safety of Xuanmiao Temple after his passing. A man like this would never stir up trouble. Moreover, his Dao lineage is a unique branch of earth virtue, so naturally, it brings no entanglements. Having lived for centuries, Changxi naturally understood Li Ziming's concerns and clarified everything. Li Ziming now felt some inclination to form ties with him and asked, I wonder what level of cultivation he has reached. He's at the early stage of the Purple Mansion realm. Li Ziming frowned, while a trace of bitterness surfaced on Changxi's face. He said with grave earnestness, for you to understand this better, we are cultivators of earth virtue. There are only a mere handful within the earth virtue Dao lineage. It is already great fortune for one to reach Purple Mansion realm, so where can one find companions of the same Dao? Most have no powerful backing behind them, which makes matters even harder. A look of regret crossed his face. He lowered his head, his expression steeped in weariness as he continued, there are only a few methods to replenish our Dao lineage. In my younger days, I was arrogant and intent only on seeking Purple Mansion realm techniques. After more than 70 years of failure, I finally gave up and turned to search for Foundation Establishment realm techniques instead. That single phrase, search for Foundation Establishment techniques, might have sounded vague, but Li Ziming immediately understood. To seek Foundation Establishment realm techniques could only mean resorting to the profound method of continuation, seizing another's immortal foundation. Yet Changxi possesses neither a life-divine ability, nor attainment in alchemy, nor a profound Dao lineage. Judging from his current state, the attempt had clearly not gone smoothly. Changxi was already nearing the end of his lifespan, having stretched out these last few years with medicine. Recalling such matters, his face showed deep regret, and a faint pall of deathly gray seemed to seep across his features. He said, there was no shortage of Gen Earth Dao, but Foundation Establishment realm techniques were limited to either Fool's Mountain Chase or substitutes derived from it. After much difficulty, I found 2 manuals among rogue cultivators, but their grade was far too low. Profound Peak Gate had no successors. I could not bring myself to force my disciples to cultivate solely to extend my Dao lineage. All I could do was scatter resources across the wilderness and Eastern Sea, hoping something might come of it. In the end, I had no life-divine ability and lacked the recognition of any gate's or sect's Taoist master. Perhaps I had recruited carelessly, or perhaps the techniques were too inferior, but no one succeeded. Hardly any even managed to break through to the Qi cultivation realm. In over a century, only a handful managed some progress. But I knew nothing of this Dao, relying solely on my own clumsy research, and everything failed in the end. I could only accept them as guest cultivators. The profound method of continuation was clearly not something easily achieved, especially for a small gate like Profound Peak Gate. Li Ziming did some mental calculations and asked doubtfully, the Green Pine Grotto Heaven. Senior Tingyun went there, did she not? That's right. Changxi nodded and sighed. In the old days, I had no qualification to claim even a share from Daoxuan Grotto Heaven. Later, fortune smiled when Green Pine Grotto Heaven appeared. I pushed desperately until I managed to send Tingyun inside. She transcribed 3 techniques at the 3 drums wall, but all 3 were broken and incomplete. I spent more than half a century revising those scattered techniques, recalling each disciple to re-examine them. At last, I managed to refine one by 60 or 70%, yet it was already too late. A self-mocking smile crossed Changxi's face. It is wholly my fault, first for my arrogance and later for my overreaching. 100 years passed in the blink of an eye, Even if I had mastered this divine ability, what difference would it make? Death would still claim me. All I can leave behind is this half-finished technique for future generations. If my profound Peak Dao lineage endures, those who pick up my path later will spend less than a century before they can cultivate a second divine ability. Li Ziming felt a chill in his heart. The elder seemed to be hinting at something, subtly using his own example to advise him. Remaining silent, he listened as Changxi went on. The 3 drums wall of green pine temple left behind 3 techniques. If future generations can refine just one more, then in 500 years my profound peak gate will have cultivators at the mid-stage of the purple mansion realm. From there, who can say? With future opportunities, they might even find a path beyond and step across the purple immortal threshold. At this point, seeing that Li Ziming remained silent, he finally offered his advice outright, saying, "After all, we are not of the green pine Dao lineage. We cannot cultivate the same way as they do. From the way your family seeks out techniques, the bright Yang Dao lineage is also incomplete." Take great care. Li Ziming nodded in agreement. Xuanmiao Temple was indeed worth a visit. Beyond the weight carried by the Treasure Earth Elder, his own family's layout in Jiangbei also depended on gaining Xuanmiao Temple's support. Besides, it was Taoist Master Shooting who suggested seeking out Changxi. He is skilled in calculations, and since he considered it safe, perhaps he even foresaw the possibility of my family establishing a foothold in Jiangbei, thought Li Ziming. He rose into the air with Changxi, summoned his divine ability, and lifted Ding Weizhang from where he waited below the mountain. The 3 entered the great void, traveling within its power. Seizing the moment, Li Ziming glanced at Changxi and asked, "What does Taoist Master think of the Hidden Cloud Cave affair?" Changxi felt slightly embarrassed. Though Li Ziming's words were polite, to Changxi's ears they clearly meant, "My family's forces have already advanced to consolidate Floating Cloud's territory and have now crossed White River Stream. Where are your profound Peak Gate people?" He hurriedly replied, "My cultivators have already reached the wilderness, cloaked with Dharma artifacts, and are moving in secret toward Hidden Cloud Cave. Hidden Cloud Cave is merely an outpost of the Baiya capital Immortal Dao. Yihui has no life divine ability and lacks skill in the arts of calculation. He cannot possibly foresee this." Li Ziming was not overly worried about Yihui, but rather about Changxiao. Yet the 2 of them had little personal connection, their ties lying only in shared interests against his own family. After some thought, he replied, "Xuanmiao Temple lies but a step away from White River Stream and can still manage its defense. All the more so since both of us happen to appear there at this very moment. He will surely be suspicious in ways we cannot predict." The Baiya capital Immortal Dao did have a few notable figures, yet Li Xiaowei carried the Li family's hidden trump card, a purple mansion realm talisman, on him. Li Ziming feared the Baiya capital Immortal Dao might have made preparations to strike down Li Chenghui and the others. Once he heard that the profound Peak Gates people were already on the move, he finally felt at ease. After exchanging a few more words, the 2 emerged from the great void. A cliff of deep black stone loomed over the sea before them. Waves surged and crashed against it, sending up thunderous roars. Cultivators moved about the cliff above. A small hill, lush with vegetation, rose a short distance further. There were no pavilions or terraces, only unspoiled natural scenery, save for a single Taoist temple atop the peak. Chapter 1065, Sumian II. Led by Changxi, they flew into the mountain. The great formation had already been lifted and was rippling with clear light. At the forefront stood a tall young man, clad in simple white robes. He had a faint glow emanating from his Taoist crown. His features were deep-set and were distinctly different from the cultivators of the south. Greetings to Taoist Master Changxi and Taoist Master Zhejiang. He bowed, performing a full courtesy, and said, "This humble Taoist welcomes the 2 Taoist masters. My elder has awaited you for quite some time. It has been a long time, Qiuxin, and your cultivation has advanced again." Changxi chuckled warmly. His tone even carried the affection of one toward a younger member of his own family. He landed at the Taoist temple and made his way toward the main hall. The main hall appeared plain and unadorned from the outside, but its colors were rich yet subdued inside. Incense smoke curled faintly through the air as Li Ziming swept his gaze across the chamber, noting a white cloth upon which was painted a Taoist figure riding a donkey with its face left blank. "Taoist friend Changxi, it has been a long time." A middle-aged Taoist came out from the hall. His face was somewhat square, and his attire simple and unremarkable. This was naturally Taoist Master Sumian, the head of Xuanmiao Temple. He offered a bow, then looked closely at Changxi's face. Clearly possessing some skill in reading qi, His expression changed as he asked, "Taoist friend, what has happened to you? Why do you look in such poor condition?" It was clear Sumian and Changxi were old acquaintances. Both were cultivators of earth virtue, and seeing one of his own kind in decline filled Sumian with sorrow. Changxi returned the courtesy and explained, "A few years ago, some trouble arose at Jingyi Mountain. Taoist Master Xuanyi requested my aid. I suffered a minor injury there and afterward encountered a shift in the spiritual aura. As a result, my appearance has grown unsightly." Li Ziming observed carefully. When Taoist Master Xuanyi was mentioned, Sumian's brows furrowed slightly, though he said nothing further. With a sigh, he remarked, "Destiny and karmic law are ever-changing. The upper evil spirit storage can no longer endure, but such matters are beyond what either of us can control. So be it, so be it." Sumian cultivated earth virtue as well. The current spiritual aura, the dwelling heart that charges profundity, was damaging the earth attribute. It was a troubling sign. He lifted his gaze to scan Li Ziming and asked, "This must be Zheajing." "Yes, it is I greet you, senior." "Good." Taoist Master Sumian smiled. "Zheajing, there's no need for such formality. Please come inside." The group entered together, offered incense, and then moved toward the rear courtyard. Sumian said leisurely, "My Xuanmiao temple carries on the inheritance of the ancient Tongshuan Palace Dao lineage. The figure depicted just now was the true monarch Su Xiang of Tongshuan Palace, who attained fruition in the treasure Earth Dao. So it was a true monarch." Li Ziming had already formed a suspicion when he noticed that the portrait bore no face. Inwardly he thought, though the Dao lineage claims a grand origin, it possesses only a single purple mansion realm divine ability. It's most likely not orthodox, and likely that they had risen by stumbling upon a chance inheritance. Sumian led the two into the rear courtyard, where an ancient bronze pill furnace of excellence stood. Other than that, there were only a few meditation cushions. The three took their seats while Ding Weizhang remained standing respectfully at the side. Sumian then resumed the conversation, saying, "Changxi, have you come this time to introduce Zheajing?" "Indeed." Changxi steadied his breath, his features returning to that of a middle-aged man. He gestured as he gave a brief introduction. Yet Li Ziming had long since inquired about Taoist Master Sumian, and Sumian already knew something of this newly advanced Purple Mansion realm cultivator, so the three exchanged only polite courtesies. Sumian's attitude toward him was cordial. With a smile he joked, "I have heard that Zheajing is an alchemist. In the future I am sure there will be no shortage of matters requiring your help. It seems I must be sure to cultivate good relations with you." "Senior flatters me," replied Li Ziming. Of course, those words could not be taken at face value. Judging from the pill furnace in this courtyard, Sumian's attainments in alchemy might well surpass his own. It was known that the requirements for alchemy included balance of yin and yang within the Shenyang mansion, with radiance of the Danshan rising fourfold within the Qihai, and the harmonizing of water and fire. These conditions were rare, yet they were not difficult for a Purple Mansion realm cultivator. Those in the Purple Mansion realm could even shape their Qihai. Never mind making radiance of Danshan, rising fourfold within the Qihai, and harmonizing water and fire, they could even mold the mixed yin and yang clouds required by artifact smiths. Save for a few special Dao lineages, most Purple Mansion cultivators could fashion such things however they wished. Balancing yin and yang within the Shenyang mansion was somewhat more difficult, but so long as one's Dao lineage drew from the 12 essences, or was not overly entangled with yin and yang, it could still be adjusted over time. Li Ziming had been born with such a balance, so he never needed to concern himself with it. Yet as Purple Mansion realm cultivators, if Changxi and others wished, they too could refine pills. The only difference lay in proficiency. They would simply be less at ease when compared to Li Ziming. Changxi grew worried that Li Ziming might ask something awkward. He quickly interjected with a reminder, speaking on his behalf, "Taoist friend Sumian has shown great interest in alchemy in recent years. Cultivating treasure earth and hailing from the north, he differs much from the Jiangnan cultivators. You might let him examine your Dharma protector. Then I must trouble you, senior." Li Ziming replied with a smile and a courteous bow. Sumian, who had already noticed Ding Weizhang standing by, beckoned him forward. He examined him with a simple hand seal, and without hesitation, nodded. "The Palace Sun Tiger, what a fine immortal foundation. Yours is identical to that of Taoist Master Yank of the Hengzhu Dao Gate 200 years ago. He was a great cultivator in his time." Releasing his hand, he formed another seal, lightly guiding a handful of ash from the pill furnace into a jade bowl. Breaking off a willow branch from the courtyard, he dipped it into clean water with practiced ease and said gently, Do you know alchemy or artifact forging? Your Danshan has been damaged, and its yin and yang are leaking away. I will mend it for you now, but hereafter you must not attempt pill refinement or artifact forging. Ding Huizang responded respectfully. In reply to Taoist master, this humble one was never blessed with such fortune to begin with. Sumian handed him the jade bowl, then flicked the willow branch dipped in water twice across his lower abdomen, calling out in a clear voice, "Close your eyes." Ding Huizang quickly obeyed, closing his eyes. Multicolored light of divine ability sprayed from Sumian's mouth and flowed across the man's body. The heavenly light between Li Ziming's brows stirred faintly. He realized that Ding Huizang's injuries were now healed. It's healed just like that, thought Li Ziming. For among all those steps just now, only that handful of ash had been burned from a spiritual item and carried any true wonder. The rest were ordinary things. An ailment that foundation establishment realm and chi cultivation realm cultivators could scarcely endure, an illness that only a few rare spiritual herbs could cure, had been healed so easily. Seeing the astonishment on both their faces, Sumian smiled and shook his head. No, not at all. One side had bright yang, and the other Gen Mountain. I simply used treasure earth as the medium to create the pattern of heavenly yang shining, all vegetation flourishing, and life brimming. I merely borrowed from the inherent rank of the two Purple Mansion realm cultivators present and made use of it. Even so, it is proof enough of Taoist master's cultivation. Li Ziming offered his praise. From what he had seen so far, Sumian's conduct was forthright and decent. Whatever his inner thoughts might be, if his dealings were consistent with what was shown here, he truly seemed reliable and worth befriending. Smiling, he said, Huizang quickly thanked the Taoist master. Chapter 1066, Matters of Immortal Capital I. Many thanks, Taoist master. Ding Huizang's voice was filled with respect. He was a bold man with hawk-like brows and a bristling beard. He bowed, speaking no further, yet it sounded far better than a long string of flattery. The old Taoist master nodded in approval. After Ding Huizang paid his respects, Sumian only smiled without speaking. The following conversation was no longer for him to hear, so Li Ziming waved his hand to dismiss him. Once Ding Huizang left, Li Ziming said sincerely, "My thanks to Taoist Master Qi. My breakthrough was recent, and my family's teachings forbid me from handling blood qi. Thus, I am unversed in this Tao. Unlike you, whose divine abilities can be wielded with ease, I was unable to deal with such matters." Zheajing jests. Sumian shook his head as he poured tea and replied, "If Zheajing wished for it, treating such an injury would not be difficult. I merely take advantage of a few divine abilities." He poured tea for the two of them. Outside the courtyard, a cold drizzle began to fall. Changxi gazed at Li Ziming with a complex expression, pressing a finger against his teacup as if to steady the mood. He said, "Zheajing brims with vigor, reminding me of myself more than 300 years ago. It stirs many emotions." In truth, Changxi was not only a little over 450 years old. Li Ziming had long harbored doubts about the lifespan of Purple Mansion realm cultivators. He paused briefly before asking, "One may still lack transcendence after having attained divine ability, but to think even the joy of 1,000-year lifespan cannot be enjoyed, and cultivation still falls short even after 500 years. Sumian gave a wistful smile. Zheajing asks well. I too once posed this question in my younger years. The Tao lineage contains only a few scattered words on the matter, but I can share them with you. Longevity is of two kinds, the lifespan of the body and the lifespan of the spirit. The former follows one's nature, while the latter follows one's fate. We Purple Mansion Golden Core Tao cultivators refine nature, which is to say, the body. The soul is imprisoned within the flesh, so the body's years are not exhausted. Yet once fate ends, the soul withers and death follows. Li Ziming seemed to grasp a hint of meaning, and Changxi smiled as he spoke. Look at the monks of the north who cultivate fate. Their bodily lives are short, but once they expire, they simply change to another body and continue living. Since they refine fate itself, the merciful one must change bodies every 100 years or so, though they must rebuild their Dharma body each time. Living for over 1,000 years poses no problem, until the end of fate itself. Correct. Sumian took over the conversation and said, so it should not truly be called 500 years of lifespan, but 500 years of fate longevity. Before the ancient cataclysm, such things were recorded in the underworld's judiciary register. So-and-so cultivator, allotted such and such years. I've even heard of cases where bribes were given to the underworld to add a few extra years of life. Changxi sighed. After the ancient cataclysm, the underworld's judiciary could no longer intervene, and so everyone's lifespan became fixed. Purple Mansion Realm cultivators have 500 years. Those who refine a life divine ability can live a bit longer, and with possession there might still be opportunities, but as for my spell divine ability, I can only wait for death. Li Ziming pondered for a moment before asking, what of the spiritual cultivation Tao? The ancient immortal cultivators were naturally well off. Once they achieved a divine ability, both nature and fate were complete, granting them true longevity. Sumian laughed briefly as he finished, but how many can truly achieve it? Look at the Wang and Zai families hiding within their vast grotto heavens. Are there even 10 cultivators among tens of millions of mortals? Out of 1,000 cultivators, can even one succeed in attaining a divine ability? Even if you follow that Tao lineage, leaving aside whether you can even find the immortal arts, the entirety of Moongaze Lake might only produce 1 or 2 children with talent. At best, they can use a bit of mana to summon rain. Li Ziming nodded in agreement, drank his tea, and replied, has the old Taoist master remained at peace in his domain? Sumian immediately understood he was asking about the Bay capital Immortal Tao and said, I have always remained stable by the sea. I have ties with Yuming of the Shen family and Minghui of the Lotus Temple in Lu. Even Yi Hui of the Bay capital Immortal Tao and Chang Yun of Chengyun Gate have come to pay their respects. Sumian's meaning was clear. His Xuanmiao temple harbored no ambitions, and he sought no upheaval in his later years. For him, living peacefully and maintaining good relations with neighboring sects was the true path. Sumian naturally wanted no part in the present tension between Changxi, the Li family, and the immortal Tao of Bai capital. He glanced at the two men and added, since I have agreed to support Changxi in overseeing Profound Peak Immortal Gate, I will, of course, keep my word. Li Ziming was not surprised upon hearing this and considered carefully before speaking. When I broke through to the Purple Mansion realm, Taoist Master Yi Hui did not come to offer congratulations. Had he done so later, it would have been fine, but instead he insulted me without cause. I do not know how I might have offended him. I also know that the Bai capital Immortal Tao is blocked to the north by Chengyun Gate, and Changyun is not to be underestimated. To the east lies Xuanmiao Temple, to the south Profound Peak Gate, and to the west the Mifan Three sects. They are natural enemies to my family, yet there is no need to bear fangs so soon. The Azure Pond sect backing the Li family was something that could not remain hidden. Not only did Yi Hui know, but it had stirred his greed. Sumian and Changxi were also aware of this. Sumian exchanged glances with Changxi and sighed. There is one matter Zheajing does not know. Yi Hui once obtained an opportunity within the Daoxuan Grotto Heaven. At that time, his entry relied heavily on the support of Gu Shentang. Not long ago, during the struggle between the east and west of Crimson Reef Island, some refrained from touching the west precisely because of his ties to Gu Shentang. Li Ziming finally understood and sighed inwardly, so it all comes down to the resentment tied to Crimson Reef. No wonder there was no mercy. The conflict between Crimson Reef's direct lineage and my family will not be easily resolved. As he pondered this, Changxi's voice dropped, carrying a trace of coldness. I have heard that the opportunity was meant for Lingshu. This man is vile. He remains a prime suspect in Zhang Lingshu's death. Li Ziming found the name Zhang Lingshu strangely familiar. After a moment's thought, he remembered that Li Zijai's Changshan Peak had lost its line from Zhang Lingshu. In fact, she had originally been the peak master of Azure Pond Peak. Sumian shook his head somewhat awkwardly and advised, this matter is hard to untangle. After all, He Ying never actually married Lingshu, so you cannot truly pin it on him. Sigh. Changxi let out a deep sigh, while Li Ziming was shaken in his heart. Of course, He Ying referred to Kong He Ying, the Purple Mansion realm seed of the Kong family, who was now in seclusion attempting a breakthrough. From their words, it seemed Kong He Ying had almost become Tao companions with Zhang Lingshu. This too is a grave enmity. If I were Yi Hui, I would surely invade the wilderness upon Changxi's death. I would not stop until Profound Peak Gate was shaken, and in the end, I would strike at Profound Peak Gate itself, disturbing Kong He Ying's breakthrough until he failed, thought Li Ziming. It was a hatred akin to killing one's wife, and Yi Hui himself surely knew its weight. Naturally, Changxi was all the more worried, so there was still this matter. Li Ziming was somewhat displeased at having been kept in the dark, but since it had been spoken aloud, showing anger would be untimely. Moreover, his enmity with Yi Hui was now all the clearer and not easily resolved. He could only lower his head and drink his tea. Changxi had been watching him closely and felt embarrassed as well, so he quickly let the matter pass. Sumian, being several centuries old, immediately added, Zheajing, do you know, Yi Hui cultivates the ancient merging Tao lineage of the Capital Guard. It is an old Dao lineage of warding off spirits, guarding mountains, and commanding spirits over waters. Its origin is ancient, and he has mastered 3 divine abilities within it. He cannot be underestimated. Li Ziming had only just learned of the Capital Guard Dao lineage. If not for Xiao Ruyu mentioning Xiao Yongling and saying his Eastern Feather Mountain belonged to this Dao, the Li family might never have known. Seeking to ease the mood, he asked, "This junior's knowledge is shallow, and I have never seen the Capital Guard Dao lineage before. May I ask for your guidance, senior?" Chapter 1067, Matters of Immortal Capital II. Sumian smiled and said, "In truth, they are found all over Jiangnan. No one has attained fruition in the Capital Guard Dao for many years, so it seems somewhat feeble. It shows little distinction until the Purple Mansion realm, being mostly based on the spirits and souls of mountains and rivers. Jiangnan is full of them, but they are difficult to recognize. Most mistake them for earth virtue, water virtue, or substitutes of the Supreme Shaman and Hengzhu Dao, without recognizing their true nature. The Xiao family's well-known Eastern Feather Mountain, the descending souls favored by Mount Yue, and the South Chu waters of the Lingu family are all of this lineage. More famous examples lie beyond Jiangnan, such as Western Sky Plateau among the Beiqiang and Northern Desert Court among the nomadic Dai tribes. These words rang true. The Li family had long believed Eastern Feather Mountain to be an Earth Virtue Dao foundation, and had only learned of its Dao lineage in recent times. Clearly touched, Changxi said, "There are many fallen Dao lineages among the immortal foundations mistaken as substitutes. If Jiangnan had not produced the famed Duanmu Kui, cultivators would still regard the Locust Shade Ghost as nothing more than a wood virtue substitute, believing it bound to lesser yin and incapable of great achievement." Exactly so. Sumian laughed heartily. As long as the technique is powerful, how could the immortal foundation be inferior? All 3 laughed, for they all understood that techniques and spell arts were the hardest to obtain. Unless there were extraordinary circumstances, no family would ever let a jade slip leave their hands. A family's jade slips would be destroyed in advance before their destruction. If not for the immortal mirror passing down their law, the Li family would still be practicing the River One Qi technique. No wonder it is called the Dao of the Capital. So it stems from the Capital Guard. I wonder what mysteries its divine abilities hold. Sumian lowered his head to sip his tea, while Changxi spoke. At Foundation Establishment Realm, it deals only with the miasma of mountains and rivers. By Purple Mansion Realm, it can command spirits and ward off evils. One can wield spirit arts to face enemies. Yet the Capital Guard is not considered aberrant at all within the ancient merging techniques. Neither thunder nor heavenly light count as its natural enemies. Li Ziming took note of this, but he still wished to inquire about Yi Hui's divine abilities. He had asked Changxi earlier, but he did not know. He had hinted around the edges twice, yet Sumian refused to speak further. Does he truly not know, or does he simply refuse to speak, unwilling to entangle himself in matters between our 2 families? Indeed, he is a cautious old Taoist master. The 3 chatted idly for a while. The cold rain in the courtyard grew heavier, dripping down from the eaves with a lonely sound. The fragrance of tea drifted in the air. Outside the courtyard, someone approached and spoke respectfully through the door, reporting to the honored Taoist masters. Taoist Mingwang has already shattered the riverfront peaks of the hidden cloud sect and slain Ping Yangzi of Tanshui Hill. He is now driven into the heartland, shaking the territory of Miffin. Cultivators from White Yi Stream have already mobilized. Good. Changxi calculated the time with his fingers and measured the distance to determine the amount of time Li Xiaowei had taken to break the formation. He laughed and said, "Truly worthy of the Li family's white Qilin. Now Yi Hui will be forced to move." Li Ziming stroked his beard with a smile, sighing inwardly. Here in the courtyard, we speak of idle matters with laughter amidst cold rain and brewing tea. Yet beneath the shadows of our Taoist robes, soldiers march, enemies are slain, and formations are broken. Tens of thousands are maneuvered, and the lord of a Foundation Establishment Realm domain becomes nothing more than a bargaining chip for merit. Cultivators depend on the river's hegemon, who himself is but a bulwark and beacon tower. This is Purple Mansion. This is what it truly means to be a Purple Mansion Realm cultivator. Li Ziming had not forgotten how generation after generation of his family had drifted with the currents under the shadows of Purple Mansion Realm cultivators, serving as pawns in others' struggles. From the moment Li Tongya first raised his head within Mount Huaqian, to the time Li Qinghong ventured alone into the Eastern Sea, the Li family had been pushing him step by step into this very position. exchanging divine abilities and the way of freedom for the peace and prosperity of 10,000 households. Li Ziming finished his tea and rose with Changxi to take his leave. Sumian knew they were heading toward the White River Stream territory and did not press them to stay. Instead, he asked Keixin to escort them out. This youth was likely a marital relative of the Kong family and was quite close to Changxi. As soon as Li Ziming stepped out of the courtyard, Keixin spoke up, bowing respectfully to him. "There is one thing I must return to you, Taoist master." He produced an object from his sleeve, bowing low as he held it up in both hands. It was a small purple cauldron with 2 ears and 3 legs, its intricate patterns faintly wreathed in flame. On the cauldron were 4 characters, written in a vigorous, flowing script Shingle Chuoba. Not daring to let Li Ziming ask first, he explained respectfully, "Years ago, when our temple was still in the Eastern Sea, I accepted an invitation from Zai Chang of the Chunyi Dao Gate to subdue demons near the Lake Xian estuary. Unexpectedly, I encountered a cultivator of your esteemed family, one skilled in thunder arts. We did not make things difficult and let her go, but an elder was left behind. He was slain by the Chunyi Dao Gate, yet this item remained with me. Today I will return it to you, so the matter may be settled." Li Ziming did recall this matter. The elder had been Yu Yuwei of the Yu family, whom Li Zijai once mentioned as the maternal uncle of Li Quantao of the Azure Pond sect. Keixin, or rather Sumian acting through him, had been uncertain of the connection and therefore returned the item. Li Ziming accepted it casually and replied, "This belonged to a Yu family cultivator. If the chance arises, I will return it to his kin." Changxi looked on cheerfully, his sharp eyes immediately noticing that Keixin bore injuries. He asked, "How did you come by that wound?" Keixin answered respectfully, replying to Taoist master, "The spirit mines at Kuanyuan Ferry were taken over by a shoal of Sioux water perch from the sea. I was injured while rescuing people." "Oh," Changxi responded, "those Sioux water demon perch have some backing. They harass the area often. It must have been hard on you." Li Ziming now understood, though his face did not change. He only sneered inwardly, "So this is an insinuation. But my family truly has no connection with the Dragon Clan. As for these Sioux water demon perch, what could I possibly do about them?" The territory of Hidden Cloud Cave. Hidden Cloud Cave lay slightly northeast and downstream of Floating Cloud Cave. The terrain there was far more varied. It was no longer a stretch of rolling hills. Flatlands lay level and calm, while several lofty peaks rose here and there. It was a fine region indeed. After passing the border at Tanshui Hill, several bustling cities came into view, full of crowds and lively activity. High above, Li Xiaowei rode a streak of light across the heavens, cloak fluttering behind his gleaming armor. A massive halberd was strapped across his body, while he carried a grisly severed head in his hand. The head belonged to Ping Yangzi, a devil cultivator from the Eastern Sea. His strength was decent, at the mid-stage of the Foundation Establishment realm. He had been stronger than Wenyi, but the mountain he occupied had only a Qi cultivation realm formation. Surrounded by Li Chenghui, Li Minggong, and the others, there was nowhere left to flee. Li Xiaowei had slain him with a single strike of his halberd. Having now crossed Tanshui Hill, the group had already pushed deep into enemy territory. Chaos raged in the cities below. Li Chenghui looked down with regret and said wistfully, "These cities are managed quite well. It is a pity we cannot take control of them. We must first strike the main peak." Li Xiaowei nodded, making his own calculations, and said in a deep voice, "Hidden Cloud plundered the population of Floating Cloud and has not had time to manage it. Together with their original numbers, they must have 1 million people now. That is a weighty figure." Population remained of great importance to the Li family. For large families with Foundation Establishment realm cultivators, there was no shortage of embryonic breathing realm disciples, or those cultivating various unrefined qi. What they lacked were people at the Foundation Establishment realm. Even managing their own was difficult, which was why they had risked employing outsiders like Bajai. Large families with Foundation Establishment realm cultivators not only had the chance to attract guest cultivators of the same realm, but could also steadily produce mid- and late-stage Qi cultivation realm cultivators of proper orthodoxy. These formed the backbone of a family capable of overseeing a territory. The Li family's present state was nowhere close to that, since those at late-stage Qi cultivation realm numbered fewer than 10 fingers, and those few were either aged and decrepit or direct descendants of the family. Chapter 1068 Wenhu I. As for his own direct lineage, Li Xiaowei still hoped they could spend more time on their cultivation. Li Minggong and Li Chenghui had already been delayed for years. Matters concerning Qingdu were unavoidable, but the rest had been nothing but a waste of time. When it comes to the Fei and Yu families of Moongaze Lake in years past, the Yu family, though once of esteemed descent, has long since been exterminated and left no direct heirs. Fortunately, they were absorbed by their family, which has now become a strong pillar. As for the Fei family, their lineage has never been remarkable and only rarely produced foundation establishment realm cultivators. Moreover, being an attached branch, there was always a difference. The Yuan family's father, sons, and even grandsons all held respectable positions within the Li family. And Siwei had even become the first foundation establishment realm cultivator from an outside surname. Though his loyalty was unquestionable, this was ultimately not a good sign. This matter had always weighed on Li Xiaowei's mind. As he kept watch while galloping along, he memorized the sizes of each city and the number of cultivators within. Then, calculating the time, he said, "The Baya capital Immortal Dao most likely already knows. They can reach us in less than 15 minutes by spirit boat." Li Xiaowei had previously spoken with Li Ziming. As a Purple Mansion realm cultivator, Li Ziming had shown remarkable tolerance for Wenhu, repeatedly making it clear he did not wish to stir up trouble and preferred a conciliatory stance. The sudden uprising of the Li family was something the capital Immortal Dao had likely not foreseen. The capital Immortal Dao undoubtedly possessed many strange arts and could not be treated like any ordinary Dao lineage. It was safest to assume they had known of the Li family's assault from the very moment it began. Li Chenghui nodded and replied, 15 minutes. We will only have time to seize 2 more mountains. Once the people of the Baya capital Immortal Dao arrive, no matter how they choose to act, we will likely fall into a deadlock. A redrawing of boundaries will follow, and any further moves will become difficult. After all, the capital Immortal Dao was a Purple Mansion realm sect transplanted from the Eastern Sea, not something the likes of Hidden Cloud Cave could compare to. Even the strongest in the Hidden Cloud Cave, Wenhu, would only rank as a mere peak master within the Immortal Dao, while Maiyashui would be nothing more than a guest cultivator, seizing 2 more mountains. Even if they seized 2 more mountains, it would still amount to 40% of the territory. It was not enough to split the Hidden Cloud domain evenly with the capital Immortal Dao. Li Xiaowei was far from satisfied, and that was only one concern, more importantly. The Ding family is still at the foot of Hongfu Mountain, the main peak of Hidden Cloud Cave. When Floating Cloud Cave had been breached, the Ding family, a powerful local family with more than 10,000 members, had naturally been taken away and brought beneath Hongfu Mountain. Ding Weizeng was certain to become a trusted general under their banner in the future. Having his family members fall into enemy hands was no small problem. Seeing Li Xiaowei frown, Li Chenghui, who clearly already understood, said quietly, "If we can seize Hongfu Peak, 70% of the territory will fall into our hands. It would be ideal to take it. If family uncle goes with me and aunt, while Siwei and the others can capture the 2 rear mountains, that will work. If not, a lone deep strike will create trouble," replied Li Xiao. He had a Purple Mansion realm talisman called the Restrained Profound Precious Pardon, which could summon a divine ability to protect its bearer, allowing him to travel freely across Jiangbei. This item had originally been bestowed by Taoist Master Yuanwu to Yu Muxian. After Yu Muxian was slain by his own immortal sword, the Purple Mansion realm talisman had fallen into their hands. At that time, only 2 people in the Azure Pond sect had reached the Purple Mansion realm and were capable of producing such a talisman. One was Kai Wei, who cultivated pristine water, since that art aided talisman work. The other was, naturally, Taoist Master Yuan Ziu, who came from a deep familial tradition. Li Xuanfeng had inquired about the talisman from Yuan Su and learned that it had been drawn by Yuan Ziu. The 2 men shared the same master, so they had recognized it. Now that Li Xiaowei possessed a Purple Mansion realm talisman, he could escape even if besieged, but Li Chenghui might not be so fortunate. As Li Xiaowei spoke, the great void rippled and a burly hero with a swallow chin and a curled beard flew out. Tall without bulk, broad-shouldered and powerful, he wore crimson soft armor and carried an imposing presence. Hail, family. Li Ziming's act of sending Ding Weizeng had indeed resolved their urgent need. Li Xiaowei laughed heartily and said, "Congratulations, Weizeng. You flatter me, I dare not accept such praise." Ding Weizeng's build was tiger-like, and he stood a head taller than those beside him. Li Xiaowei knew Li Ziming had healed his wounds and felt pleased, but this was not the time for idle talk. He said, "I am confident with Weizeng fighting. Family uncle and Aunt Mingong will level the rear for us. Weizeng and I will rush to Hongfu Mountain at once and rescue the Ding family." He sheathed his halberd. Ding Weizeng was stunned. Only then did he realize the entire Ding family had been taken to Hongfu Mountain. He was deeply moved, yet he still cautioned, "Family head, Hongfu Mountain has 4 Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators, including Wenhu. Wenhu and Wang He are not to be underestimated, and there is a large Foundation Establishment Realm formation protecting them. If only the 2 of us attack, it would be far too risky." Li Xiaowei merely summoned Ma Yaoshui and smiled. "She is coming too." Ding Weizhang frowned, but he still mounted the wind as they headed east together. As they sped along, Li Xiaowei said with a smile, "Besides, given the current situation, can Hongfu Mountain still be defended by 4 Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators? Am I expected to assault Hongfu Mountain head-on? Moreover, Wenhu's immortal foundation is Hurricane Ghost Yin. Our bright yang, thunder, and true fire techniques would be clashing directly with him. Li Xiaowei has breached Tanshui Hill." Wenhu's gaze was dark and cold as he stood on the mountainside, unease churning in his heart. Ever since he had learned that Chidu had never gone to the Li family, Wenhu knew that things had gone awry. However, he had kept a calm facade. The relationship between the Li family and the capital Immortal Dao behind him was bound to deteriorate, and being caught in the middle, his own fate would hardly be favorable. What madness is this? Now, he was pacing in agitation. He knew the Baiyi capital Immortal Dao could not have learned the news much later than he had, yet he still sent men to inform them. In this situation, aside from blocking the Li family as best I can for the capital Immortal Dao, there is no other path left for me, muttered. The fears he had carried upon leaving the Li family had now become prophecy. What made it more tragic was that Ping Wangzi's words too had come true. A bird seeks the forest, and a man seeks a master. There is no chance for both sides to collapse. The people of the Baiyi capital Immortal Dao will arrive at any moment, so I need not fear for my life. For now, no one can block Li Xiaowei, and only I can personally take the field, Wenhu murmured to himself. Though he had been only a guest cultivator in the Eastern Sea, with little experience, he still knew how to face an enemy. He left 1 man to guard the mountain, and led the other 2 to join him as reinforcements. Wenhu understood all too well that anyone in Hidden Cloud Cave could surrender to the Li family except for him. He had been personally recruited by Taoist Chidu, while the others served him. Only Wenhu served the Purple Mansion Realm cultivators. The Purple Mansion Realm cultivators stand above all. There is nothing between them that cannot be reconciled. These territories are only bargaining chips. Once the Li family are subdued and the 2 sides speak peace, I will certainly be the one put forward. The only way to survive is to fully support the capital Immortal Dao against the Li family. The harsher I fight, the better my chances to live. In any case, it won't last more than 30 minutes. Li Xiaowei cannot kill me. Wenhu, after all, was Chidu's man and had seen the grand stage. Where Ma Yaoshui needed Li Xiaowei's reminders, he already understood the stakes. Rushing out of the mountain, he had flown scarcely 50 kilometers when a sudden flash lit his vision and a sharp pain stabbed his chest. Wenhu vaguely saw a string of sparks laced with thick white mist rising from his chest. Another wave of pain struck and a radiant light sped toward him from afar. He hastily sealed the wound at his chest, swallowed down the blood, and shouted, "Li Xiaowei." Chapter 1069 Wenhu Ai. The halberd swelled before Wenhu's eyes like a falling star, and cold sweat drenched him. Though he believed Li Xiaowei could not kill him, that did not mean he could withstand 2 preemptive strikes from this white Qilin. He quickly slapped his hands together, summoning a surge of pure qi. When the pure qi faded, Wenhu's figure reappeared more than 30 meters away. His wound was sealed, though his mana continued to ebb and falter. Inwardly, he gave thanks. Fortunately, Bright Yang is a majestic Dao, and its power diminishes somewhat when used to launch a sneak attack with heavenly light. Otherwise, that strike would have finished me. The halberd thrust once more toward his chest, Wenhu dared not curse but hastily activated his white jade Dharma artifact, unleashing talismans to shield himself. A youth appeared before him, eyes glowing a dusky gold and smiling as he said, "You are clever indeed." Clang. The halberd lashed against the Dharma artifact, shattering the glow of the talismans. The white jade Dharma artifact groaned under the impact. The Dharma artifact was something Wenhu had purchased after true monarch Shang Yuan's ascension, and now it proved its worth. He used the moment to exhale a stream of black qi. Whoosh! Suddenly, a violent gale swept through the forest, thick with black qi. Rain was already falling, but now it reflected his immortal foundation, the Hurricane Ghost Yin, making its power all the more dreadful. Frost quietly spread in every direction, yet Wenhu felt no certainty in his heart. There was no other reason. The Li family possessed a bright Yang cultivator who had attained the Purple Mansion realm. As expected, Li Xiaowei merely drew a small banner from his sleeve and tossed it lightly into the air. The wind stilled and the rain ceased. Flames of 5 shades brown, pale yellow, goose yellow, bright red, and vermilion leaped skyward, filling the area with blazing light as the yin qi dissolved. Wenhu felt helpless, though at least he had earned a moment to breathe. His 2 subordinates quickly regrouped. One of them, Wang He, carried a feather fan. A trusted aide of Wenhu's, Wang He still wore a look of dread. Before Wenhu could even take comfort in his reinforcements, a coppery-red radiance flared, and a broad man with a swallow chin and curling beard appeared in midair. He had a cold smile on his face as his eyes locked onto Wenhu with unyielding focus. Ding, Wei, Zheng. For the first time, Wenhu's mind went utterly blank. Realization struck him as his black qi surged uncontrollably, but all he saw was Ding Weizeng's icy expression. He pressed Wang He down with a single palm and stood in the air like a great tiger ready to pounce. In that instant, Wenhu's mind went blank again. Envy, jealousy, and fear all surged at once. To be fair, Wenhu had never wished to offend the Li family, nor the capital immortal Dao that was backing him. He knew he was not even worthy of being considered a chess piece. Should either side bear him a grudge, his end would be unimaginably miserable. That was why he had refused to guard Hongfu Mountain. He knew full well that defending Hongfu Mountain was the way to minimize losses. With 4 Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators anchoring the Great Formation, no matter how Li Xiaowei attacked, the total loss of territory would not exceed half. If Hongfu Mountain remained intact until the capital Immortal Dao's arrival, the Li family would gain no advantage from Hidden Cloud Cave. But Chidu of capital Immortal Dao had many enemies. If Wenhu merely sat in the mountain like a dead man, those stubborn Daoists of capital Immortal Dao would surely voice an objection. He would have to be grievously wounded, and the loss of territory would be inevitable, for their opponent was none other than a Purple Mansion Realm immortal family, and the man who came was Li Xiaowei himself. However, if he held fast, causing the Li family's gains to be heavily diminished, they would come to hate him bitterly. Wenhu had no wish to offend the Purple Mansion Realm Zheajing or Li Xiaowei, who was all but certain to reach the Purple Mansion Realm in the future. Only by yielding Hongfu Mountain could he satisfy the Li family. Thus, caught between the guilt of mediocrity and the guilt of cowardice, he had chosen the former. In his plan, Ma Yashui would almost certainly surrender, allowing Li Xiaowei to seize the mountain. Then Li Xiaowei would turn on him and wound him gravely. But when the capital Immortal Dao came to his rescue, the division of territory would no longer concern him, thus offending neither side. But Li Xiaowei had unexpectedly cornered him here. And the Ding Weizeng he had always scorned had become the Li family's trusted general. Wenhu nearly lost control of his mind, unable to stop himself from bitterly cursing inwardly. 100 schemes cannot compare to a handsome face and a fine Dao lineage. 1,000 careful calculations cannot compare to a blessed fate that turns calamity into fortune. Yet as a rogue cultivator who could rival disciples of major sects in the Foundation Establishment Realm, his will was far from ordinary. He instantly regained clarity. Though his body smoked under the blazing heavenly light, he still gritted his teeth and fought desperately to block Li Xiaowei's halberd technique. In truth, Wenhu's cultivation was far above Li Xiaowei's, having already surpassed the late stage of the Foundation Establishment Realm. If he had a different Dao foundation, he could likely have traded blows evenly with this white Qilin before him, but his Dharma artifacts and spell arts were inferior. His immortal foundation was suppressed, his chest had been pierced in the opening exchange, and his mana ran sluggishly. He could only rely on experience and his reserves to resist with difficulty. On the other hand, Li Xiaowei had no intention of wasting time. Forming a seal with one hand, he extended his forefinger. Sunlight seeped faintly through the clouds, and brilliance flared at his fingertip. Supreme Yang Resonance Radiant Art. The Supreme Yang Resonance Radiant Art was a technique of myriad transformations. Now it drew upon the sun's light, seizing Wenhu's jade shield. The shadow of the halberd grew heavy and plunged straight toward Wenhu's wound, but Wenhu was no ordinary man. He bit his tongue fiercely and spat out a mouthful of blood essence. It roared in his mouth and burst forth as a jet of dark radiance, surging toward Li Xiaowei and shattering the heavenly light around him. For the first time, surprise flickered across Li Xiaowei's face, the heavy abyssal. Of course, this was not the true heavy abyssal gale, famed for blowing away Dharma artifacts. Wenhu had merely imitated a fraction of its profundity using his Dao foundation, Hurricane Ghost Yin. But even so, it was enough to catch an ordinary Foundation Establishment Realm cultivator off guard, causing Li Xiaowei to falter slightly. But Li Xiaowei knew this wind well. The true heavy abyssal gale within his own Chang'eming profound insight screen was the genuine article, though that extraordinary Dharma artifact was currently in Li Ziming's possession. He struggled slightly, and the gale lost its effect. Wenhu had not expected him to break free so swiftly, but his next spell art was already formed. Black light condensed around him as he growled, "Command." A beam of black Dharma light surged forth, raising violent gusts and filling the air with ghostly qi. The center of Li Xiaowei's brow flared with light, releasing the heavenly radiance, hidden light, which collided with the black Dharma light in a thunderous crash. Boom. The heavenly radiance, hidden light effortlessly shattered the black Dharma light and struck Wenhu in the distance, who was wielding his jade shield. Smoke billowed from the shield as cracks spread across its surface. Li Xiaowei narrowed his golden eyes slightly, scanning coldly. A fine spell art indeed. He stepped northward, leaving Wenhu where he stood. His halberd gleamed with heavenly brilliance as he thrust into the air. A muffled cry sounded, and a blood-soaked figure was forced out of the sky. Who else could it be but Wenhu? To have trained the meager hurricane ghost Yin to this level, you are at least a talent, exclaimed Li Xiaowei. Chapter 1070, Test I. Li Xiaowei's halberd pierced through Wenhu's abdomen. He flexed his forearm and lifted the halberd upward to flip him over. Wenhu's face was covered in blood and his complexion pale, yet the spell arts in his hands did not cease. Blood-red radiance surged, showing he still intended to fight to the death. Raising his other hand, Li Xiaowei summoned the great sun's radiance to shine upon Wenhu's face, suppressing him. The Supreme Yang Resonance Radiant Art was a 5th-grade technique and capable of endless transformations to subdue foes. Wenhu's hurricane ghost Yin was already weak against bright Yang, but it feared the Supreme Yang even more. The blazing light unraveled his spells and scorching heat surged into his mind. His consciousness nearly slipped away, but Wenhu clenched his teeth and forced his eyes open in one last breath of defiance. Even though his eyes were seared white by the sunlight and his face charred black, his hand still reached for his storage pouch. Good, such willpower, thought Li Xiaowei. Li Xiaowei drew back his halberd. Heavenly radiance, hidden light shone from his brow as he severed Wenhu's arms. Then, using the sun's brilliance, he bound him fast so he could no longer move. Elsewhere, Ding Weizeng had already beaten the other two into a miserable state. His immortal foundation was formidable, empowering his body with flowing red light and copper-yellow pupils. The weaker devil cultivator was already half dead and unable to continue, leaving only the deputy cave master Wang He struggling desperately to hold on. Now that Wenhu was subdued, Li Xiaowei turned his gaze, instantly making Wang He break out in cold sweat and falter in fear. Just as he was about to speak, a white light flared at the horizon. The white light flickered in the sky, leaving a burning tail in the sky before landing at Wang He's side and revealing a figure. "I am Song Yunbai of the capital Immortal Dao. Greetings, fellow Taoist." The woman was already forming seals with her hands. Her face was slightly round, her brows sharp, and her white robes neat and crisp. She bore the features of Jiangbei. Her gaze was piercing as it swept across Li Xiaowei and Ding Weizeng. Clearly, she did not recognize them. Her eyes skimmed over Ding Weizeng, pausing only for a moment before settling on Li Xiaowei. Song Yunbai froze as she raised her head. A strange expression flickered across her face. She stepped back half a pace, hesitating. Her bright eyes shifted away quickly, and her voice came out somewhat muffled. Hidden Cloud Cave was enlightened under the capital Immortal Dao. Why has your esteemed family suddenly raised blades against it without cause? Wang He and the others retreated behind her. Holding his halberd, Li Xiaowei replied, "So it is a fellow Taoist of the capital Immortal Dao. Wenhu of Hidden Cloud Cave deceived a Taoist master and offended the might of the Purple Mansion realm. I came specifically to seize him. Now that he has been captured, I shall be taking him away." Song Yunbai's tone was courteous, and Li Xiaowei did not press with harsh words either. He merely faced her with his captive in hand. Yet in the span of a few seconds, thunder rumbled behind them, true fire surged, and two figures arrived in succession. The woman was striking and poised, holding a lamp in her hand. Meanwhile, the man's eyes gleamed like drops of lacquer as he rode thunder. The siblings Li Minggong and Li Chenghui stood beside Li Xiaowei. Before they could speak, two more streams of light streaked in from the north and south and halted nearby. The two streaks of light transformed into human form. To the left stood a tall woman in a rainbow-colored gown. She was holding a green sash and her face was twisted with anger. To the right stood a man wearing a bamboo hat and dressed in brown. He had a blade at his waist, and his gaze was sharp as he took in the situation. What does the Li family mean by this? The woman in the rainbow gown was blunt and confrontational. Gripping her Dharma artifact sash, she pointed at Wenhu and shouted in fury, This cultivator was enlightened by our Taoist head Chidu. Your family is also an esteemed family of Jiangnan. Do you not know that Hidden Cloud Cave is a vassal of the capital Immortal Tao? It was already generous of us to allow your family to take the territory of Floating Cloud Cave, yet you overreach and now dare to trespass into Hidden Cloud Cave. Absurd. Naturally, Li Chenghui would not let Li Xiaowei personally step into the quarrel. He stepped forward and said coldly, "Since fellow Taoist acknowledges that Hidden Cloud Cave is under your protection, have you managed your people properly? For 10 years, Hidden Cloud and Floating Cloud has harassed the northern shores of my Moongaze Lake. Did we ever hear a word from you then? Only today do you finally arrive, and only now so quick to voice your concerns." You, the woman in the rainbow gown, was flushed with anger but forced a cold laugh. The man in the bamboo hat finally spoke, clasping his hands. "I am Gongsun Beifan of the Immortal Tao, greeting the 3 esteemed young ones of an immortal family. With your family's elder having attained the Purple Mansion realm, such matters should have long been swept aside. Even if they could not be wholly forgiven, they ought to have been discussed under the Purple Mansion realm cultivator's mediation to resolve grudges, rather than acting so suddenly to seize our holdings." He addressed the 3, and Li Minggong replied, "Good. Since the capital Immortal Tao still remembers that our Taoist master has achieved the Purple Mansion realm, then tell me, who did your sect send? And with what did you offer congratulations? When Floating Cloud and Hidden Cloud provoked us before, did our Taoist master not give them a chance? Now seeing the situation before you, does capital Immortal Tao truly claim ignorance of how this came to be?" Li Minggong's tone was not forceful, but her words were sharp enough to silence Gongsun Beifan. Some things were not his place to answer, so he lowered his head in silence. Watching the exchange of words, Li Xiaowei gradually pieced together the truth. No force was ever a monolith, much less the capital Immortal Tao, which had been in Jiangbei for barely over a decade. The first to arrive, Song Yunbai, was of the lowest standing among the 3, and her strength was not great. She had simply arrived first because she was nearby. In truth, she represented the Song family of Bei territory in Jiangbei, a local power. Her role within the capital Immortal Tao was much like Li Zijai's had been in the Azure Pond sect in past years. She was hardly one to wield authority. Naturally, her words carried no hostility, and she kept a polite, detached tone. As for Gongsun Beifan, he was clearly a guest cultivator or one with a Dharma protector class, much like in Siwei in the Li family. He might defend the Immortal Tao, but he held no power to decide matters. Thus, he spoke as politely as he could. Only the woman in the rainbow gown burned with rage, so she must be the true direct lineage of the capital Immortal Tao. Indeed, when Gongsun Beifan fell silent, the woman in the rainbow gown gnashed her teeth and declared, "You can always find an excuse if you wish to condemn. It's fine that your family covets territory, but why hide behind false pretexts? Our sect is in Jiangbei, and your family is in Jiangnan. There was never any need to offer your family congratulations in the first place, so why demand so much of us?" Li Chenghui's face darkened as she ignored Hidden Cloud Cave's prior offenses and seized the only convenient ground. After all, Chengyun Gate, which was also a Jiangbei power, had sent their gate master in person. At this point, having sorted out the identities of the 3, Li Xiaowei finally spoke, "There is no need for further words. Hidden Cloud Cave has harassed my family for 10 years and driven our direct bloodline into peril time and again. Such grudges cannot be brushed aside. Hongfu Mountain is already in our hands. The 3 of you should return to where you came from." Li Xiaowei had already sent Maiyashui to seize Hongfu Mountain. She carried the command token needed to enter the formation and had entered the mountain by now. The woman in the rainbow gown had clearly expected this line of argument. She laughed coldly as she asked, "Does fellow Taoist truly think he has cornered us?" Chapter 1071, Test, Aye. At those words, swords were drawn and bows bent in an instant. Li Chenghui's hand immediately pressed down on the 6-fold profound thunder punishment tokens. Gongsun Beifan reached for the long blade at his waist. Wang He and the others broke out in cold sweat, staring at one another in fear. In truth, Li Xiaowei was not afraid of them. He had needed to weigh things carefully before Ding Weizeng's arrival, but now, since both that burly man and Li Chenghui were present, handling the 3 before them was more than within their means. The only worry is reinforcements from the capital Immortal Tao. He did not need to think for long. There were surely Purple Mansion realm cultivators locked in confrontation within the great void above. If he fought these 3 now and lost, it would force Li Ziming into a disadvantage and constrain his actions. He calculated silently, holding his halberd ready, his eyes narrowed in thought. Then he said coldly, "You're welcome to try." Just then, a hearty laugh rang out from the horizon, followed by a loud voice. "Taoist Mingwang, I have come to aid you." Everyone looked up and saw a brown-yellow spirit boat of profound stone speeding toward them, sending waves of air rolling before it. At its bow stood a man in a dark, patterned robe. He was pale and beardless, with an urgent expression. It was none other than Kong Guxi, gate master of Profound Peak Gate. The woman in the rainbow gown paled. At last she understood, and she furiously laughed. "So that's it. You two families have joined hands in secret. No wonder you dared show such insolence." Kong Guxi arrived in the blink of an eye. 3 men and a woman descended from the spirit boat behind him. 2 of them were already at the mid-stage of the Foundation establishment realm. Now that they had 5 at their side, the balance of power instantly shifted. Yet the woman in the rainbow gown showed no fear. She glared at Kong Guxi as she shouted, "Kong Guxi, how many years of lifespan does your Taoist master even have left? And yet you dare to strike against my capital, immortal Tao." Kong Guxi faced her with a cold, unyielding expression. Though he often smiled in his interactions with the Li family, when this beardless man furrowed his brows and set his jaw, there was a chilling ruthlessness about him. He called back, "I've long despised you. Practicing that cursed, headless ghost Tao, your ghastly airs are even more arrogant than those of the Dragon Maiden." Such words flew at her like a slap across the face. It was utterly unlike what one expected from him. The rainbow-gowned woman froze in shock, her cheeks flushing red as she prepared to retort. But Gongsun Beifan suddenly pulled her back and shouted, "Careful." The rainbow-gowned woman turned her head instinctively, only to see the halberd-wielding man's brow shining with radiant light as a vast surge of bright yang brilliance rose. Heavenly radiance, hidden light. Li Xiaowei had been waiting for the moment she looked away. Heavenly radiance, hidden light erupted, crashing down upon her. In that split second, a metallic clang rang out as cold light flashed. Gongsun Beifan drew his blade in a swift motion, unleashing a radiance of Zheng metal that shielded the rainbow-gowned woman. The heavens shifted from stillness to chaos in an instant. Thunder roared, true fire spread, mountains seemed to rise, and the force of Zheng metal surged through the air. The Great Void. Li Ziming stood in the Great Void, clad in a white and gold Taoist robe. Radiance gleamed between his brows, and the colorful light of divine energy surged from his body. At his side, Changxi's divine manifestation was fully formed as he appeared as a middle-aged man with white jade hanging on his chest. Before them stood another, wearing a dark blue Taoist robe. His face was small and his chin slightly pointed, yet his features had a certain handsome air. His long hair was tied neatly behind his head, and spiritual aura clung to him as he held a sword across his chest. Beneath him crouched a bird beast covered in scales, shaped like a crow with pitch-black eyes. The Taoist himself said nothing, watching them coldly. "Taoist Yi Hui," Changxi said coldly. Yi Hui stroked the slender, elegant Dharma sword in his arms and finally spoke, "Zheajing, what is the meaning of this?" Yi Hui's expression showed clear surprise. It seemed as though he had never considered that the Li family would suddenly rise, much less that they would take over the holdings of Profound Peak Gate. His hand ran lightly along the sword's edge as he said softly, "I thought you would humor that old man until he died, and then you and I would split Profound Peak Gate evenly between us. No need for fanfare, and no need for Purple Mansion realm confrontations. Wouldn't that have been better?" The sword in his hand did not seem to be a sword of sword Tao, but rather a ritual artifact for spellcasting, radiating rings of mana. Yi Hui smiled thinly as he said, "We could sort out the division of benefits afterward. Wouldn't that be best for both of us? The lands of Profound Peak Gate would be taken by strength, its people would follow you, and the Mountain Gate would belong to me. I never thought, without me even moving, you would act first against mine. Now it has reached the point where 2 Purple Mansion realm cultivators need to confront one another, birthing needless discord. Why bring this about?" Yi Hui's tone gradually lost its humor as he sighed, "So you truly mean to stand against me?" A Purple Mansion realm cultivator in his prime against a mess with no Purple Mansion realm cultivator. Can you really not see which weighs heavier? He did not regard Changxi at all, as though the man did not exist in the Great Void. He spoke only to Li Ziming. Changxi's face darkened, his tone turning grim. "Yi Hui." Yi Hui glanced at him and asked, "Old man, do you mean to throw your life away against me? You could fight me to the death with your divine ability, but what then? You're already half in the grave, yet you still can't stop stirring up strife." Changxi fell silent, speaking no further. It was Li Ziming who intervened. "Taoist friend, spare us the false pretenses. Hidden Cloud Cave has harmed my family time and again, and Chidu himself has overstepped propriety. If the capital Immortal Dao bore even a shred of goodwill, matters would never have come to this point. Ha ha ha. Yi Hui let out a laugh and said, "So what if it's true? What friendship is there? What goodwill exists between Purple Mansion Realm cultivators? Zheajing, if you cannot see this clearly, you will suffer for it sooner or later." He seemed unwilling to continue and said, "Since when who has offended your family, take this rogue cultivator if you wish. As for the loss in the Hidden Cloud territory, I will not hold you accountable. Withdraw to Floating Cloud, and our two families will still have matters to discuss." Withdraw. Li Ziming's hand tightened slightly within his sleeve. He did not believe a single word from Yi Hui's mouth about splitting Profound Peak Gate evenly or slowly dividing benefits afterward. It all sounded tempting, but it was nothing more than empty talk. Moreover, saving Profound Peak Gate did not mean Profound Peak Gate must be defended on every side. Li Ziming already had a favorable impression of Xuanmiao Temple, which gave him further confidence. Moreover, the Outer Sea still held Jingyi Mountain. He said coldly, "Since Taoist friend is unwilling to offer congratulations, I shall accept the Hidden Cloud Cave territory as the gift instead." Yi Hui's brow furrowed as he stared back across the vast void. Spiritual light rippled through the great void, and the Dharma sword in his hands began to tremble. Changxi stood unmoving in front of Li Ziming, his stance leaving no doubt about his resolve. At this moment, Li Ziming had no fear of crossing swords with Yi Hui. Not only did he have Changxi beside him, who cared little for his own life, but once the two sides clashed, the first to suffer would surely be the capital Immortal Dao's direct lineage below. By the time three Purple Mansion Realm cultivators fought for days and nights, Li Xiaowei would likely already have stormed into Bai'ai territory. Good, good, good. Yi Hui merely nodded. "Take this territory then, but remember that Hidden Cloud Cave was not won by your clever schemes. When that old man dies, I will see how you clean up the mess. No need for Taoist friend to trouble yourself over it," Li Ziming replied with a smile. Yi Hui sneered coldly as he vanished into the great void, leaving only a final bitter remark. "Old man, the day Profound Peak Gate will inevitably be carved up by the various families is not far off." Changxi said nothing. Li Ziming only watched Yi Hui's figure recede. He offered no words of comfort, for the old Taoist had concealed matters concerning Kang Heiying, which was no small fault. Li Ziming still felt discontent and could not bring himself to speak. The two simply rode their divine arts across the skies toward the lake. Changxi sighed. "I must have made Zheajing laugh at me." Chapter 1072, Entering Hidden Cloud I. "Not at all, senior." Li Ziming responded politely, but he did not continue the conversation. He gazed out of the great void and saw Li Xiaowei and several others trading blows with the direct lineage of the capital Immortal Dao. Both sides had sustained injuries. Once Yi Hui withdrew, the capital Immortal Dao cultivators ceased fighting and retreated to guard the few remaining mountains within the territory of Hidden Cloud Cave. Seizing nearly 70% of the territory is no small gain. Leaving the Hidden Cloud Cave situation in the hands of Li Xiaowei and the others, he departed on his divine ability. He remained silent along the way, faintly showing his displeasure. Changxi naturally noticed and sighed quietly. When the two landed at Zhaijing Mountain, the old Taoist master said hoarsely, "Yi Hui is a cultivator from the Eastern Sea. Though he may have had opportunities through his Dao lineage, the fact that he has cultivated to this level does not make his words trustworthy." Zheajing paid his provocations no mind, yet Li Ziming's heart remained tangled. Yi Hui's words of provocation were naturally not credible. If this Purple Mansion Realm cultivator from the Capital Guard truly intended to divide up Profound Peak Gate's territory, would he not have long since sent gifts to show goodwill, making his intentions clearer and more reasonable? But the more he thought about it now, the more uncertain he became. Then why not? Even if Changxi were to die, it would still be impossible for all of Profound Peak Gate's territory to fall into Yi Hui's hands. His own side stood nearby, so whenever Profound Peak Gate was in trouble, they would rush to aid, while the capital Immortal Dao would seize territory. The speed of taking over land between the two was as different as heaven and earth. In Li Ziming's view, if Yi Hui truly wanted to seize more of Profound Peak Gate's territory, he should not have forced Profound Peak Gate toward the Li family. Even if he bore ill will toward them, he should have pretended to show goodwill for the moment, claiming no interest in Profound Peak Gate. That way, turning against them in a sudden sneak attack would be far easier. Now that things have come to this, with Changxi still alive, my family will send people to reinforce Profound Peak Gate. He will have to face Profound Peak Gate and Moongaze Lake joining forces to defend their border. The difficulty compared to before is like heaven and earth apart. Either he has some other assurance, or else his goal was never profound Peak Gates territory at all. Even now, Li Ziming could not discern what Taoist master Yi Hui truly wanted. That was the most disadvantageous aspect of the situation. No matter how arrogant the man's words were, he could only regard them as attempts to mislead. While he sank into these thoughts, Changxi said, "Zheajing, although Yi Hui has retreated, it is only because he does not wish to clash with us at this moment." Li Ziming frowned and asked, "Yi Hui is extremely arrogant. Is he truly unafraid of you striking back, senior? If you know anything, I beg you to explain it clearly. Should you conceal it, disaster may follow." Earlier, Changxi had concealed the fact that Kang Heiying bore a mortal grudge against Yi Hui for killing his wife. That was no trivial matter. In the future, Yi Hui's ambitions would not only target profound Peak Gates territory and Dao lineage, but also the very lives of Kang Heiying's bloodline. The enmity had risen to a higher level. Changxi had little lifespan left, and Yi Hui was already an enemy. The matter of Kang Heiying was not something Li Ziming could press, but now that he had spoken so plainly, Changxi could only nod, sighing softly. At this point, he no longer held back. "Zheajing, you may not know that he has two divine abilities, one being a body divine ability. My Fool's Mountain Chase can neither suppress nor entangle it. Even if I fought desperately, I can only wound him at best. However, matters cannot be weighed so simply." Years ago, Taoist Master Chang of the Wuzhou Gate, a mid-stage Purple Mansion realm cultivator, pursued Hengzhu Dao Gate's Taoist Master Yank. Yet Yank's body divine ability dragged the chase across the Wuwei Great Void for 6 years, and still he could not prevail. How could I do more when the disparity between Yi Hui and I is even greater? I am not Ning Tiaxiao, who possessed an ancient spirit artifact to subdue foes. If I truly fought him, even at the cost of my life, he would never be willing to battle me directly, unless an ambush were set within the Great Void. Li Ziming had attained the Purple Mansion realm, and naturally knew how difficult it was to kill someone of the same realm when divine abilities were evenly matched. Yet he did not mean for Changxi to risk his life against Yi Hui. The capital Immortal Dao was still rooted in Jiangbei. One might escape as a monk, but could the temple itself flee? Before he could even hint at this, Changxi continued, "As for harming his juniors in secret, my Dao lineage still endures in this world. I cannot commit an act that would leave an eternal stench on my name. I must not condemn my descendants to die without burial, burdened with infamy. And as for striking where he must defend, to attack the gate at Bai, Zheajing, think carefully, who has nourished the land of Jiangbei." Li Ziming realized at once and answered, "The struggle between North and South, is it tied to fruition attainment?" "Exactly so." Changxi's expression grew wistful as he replied, "How many cultivators of every sect have shed blood in the struggle between North and South? That is what has nurtured Jiangbei into its present form. Though most of the burden was cutting the flesh of Azure Pond sect and drinking the blood of devil cultivators and rogue cultivators, this land absolutely cannot be disturbed. If I so much as step into Bai, Yi Hui will laugh aloud. He will surely appear to meet me. Should the two of us clash, the spiritual energy of Bai's territory would be gravely damaged. That would be no small calamity. We would not even come to blows before the various sects intervened to stop us. Yuanziu from the south, Qiushui from the west, Yuming and Shanbai from the north, Sumian from the east, even the Buddhist cultivators would act." Changxi gave him a deep look and said hoarsely, "His gate lies in Jiangbei. That is why he acts so fearlessly." Only now did Li Ziming understand why Yi Hui had dismissed Changxi so brazenly. He fell silent for a moment, then said, "Do you have a plan, senior? If we limit ourselves to our current methods, I fear it will be difficult to resist the enemy." After all, judging by the current situation, Changxi was truly powerless unless the capital Immortal Dao crossed the river to wage war. Seeing Li Ziming troubled, Changxi sipped his tea, the wrinkles on his face deepening further. The elder finally said, "Zheajing, if I perish and the situation becomes truly perilous and beyond salvation, you may offer Shanji Prefecture to the Purple Smoke Gate in exchange for their protection. As long as our gate remains, that will be enough." Li Ziming breathed a sigh of relief and said solemnly, "Good. Many matters will be easier to handle with your word. I only ask that you leave a letter or a handwritten note as proof." The Kang family had cultivated Shanji Prefecture for generations, never enforcing separation between mortals and immortals. Not only were many of its people of Kang blood, but most were deeply tied to the gate's cultivators. Li Ziming did not wish to play the benefactor only to be cursed later, so he insisted the elder put it in writing. Changxi craned his neck and nodded. This matter must not be made public, or the profound Peak Gate's disciples would lose all will to fight. In truth, I have already written a portion of my last testament and hidden it beneath the chief seat of Stillness Peak Hall on the main peak. I will write another for you, Ziming, so the two may serve as a reference for each other. Li Ziming handed him a piece of spirit cloth. Changxi wrote 2 lines using divine energy as his brush and passed it to him. The cloth was already as heavy as a boulder, weighing over 1,000 caddies. As he handed it over, the elder's frailty grew more apparent, and he said respectfully, "My thanks, Zheajing." He offered no more courtesies. He cupped his hands in farewell, mounted his divine ability, and vanished into the great void. Li Ziming turned the cloth over and read it. It entrusts Taoist friend Zheajing to safeguard profound peak gate. Should the situation turn unfavorable, Shanji Prefecture may be given to another sect in exchange for aid. Though Changxi's divine ability was not suited for spell dueling, its subtleties were in no way inferior. His brushstrokes carried anomalies, and the characters were engraved like stone, as if they might fall from the cloth. Li Ziming nodded inwardly in approval. His own divine ability was also a spell divine ability, brushing the edge of corporeal law. The fire torch blazed within his heart. Bright yang manifested inside and out. Purple fire burned at the juke acupoint, and heavenly light shone at the center of his brow. Beyond those, he also had the heaven-venerating gate. He was not weak in spell combat, yet he lacked the myriad transformations and subtleties of Changxi's art. When the Li family relocated to Mount Qingdu, they had invited Kong Yu. The elder could assist in moving mountains with just a copy of Changxi's handwriting. Though Li Ziming's inscriptions on the 6 gates above his own lake could reflect heavenly light, they lacked the potency of Changxi's, which could serve as talismans. Once this matter is settled, I should make a trip to the Kui family in the Eastern Sea. There should be peers there with whom I can cultivate. Along the way, I can also inquire into Purple Mansion realm formations, at the very least, enough to encompass Zhaijing Mountain. As for Yi Hui, who knows what this fellow covets? Taoist master shooting may not necessarily be concerned. He is neither kin nor close friend, and I cannot trouble him again and again. Sigh, if only Brother Zijin were here. He gathered his thoughts and pondered inwardly. On the road, I should press Changxi once more to see if I can learn the spell for forging a spirit artifact embryo. Chapter 1073, Entering Hidden Cloud II, the territory of White River Stream. Brocaded light shimmered on Hongfu Mountain, forming a great arc-shaped halo that hovered above the peak. Wisps of cloud-like glow drifted softly within it. From afar, it looked less like an immortal gate and more like the residence of an immortal family. Li Xiaowei and the others arrived in streaks of light. Ma Yaxue hurried out from within the formation. When cultivators of the Bai capital Immortal Dao had arrived earlier, she had been so frightened that she hid inside, clutching the formation plate in panic and pretending ignorance. Fortunately, no one had paid her the slightest attention. Ma Yaxue held up the multicolored formation plate with both hands as Li Xiaowei descended and said respectfully, "Greetings, family head. This is the formation plate of the Cloud-Veiling Sky Ascent Formation of Hongfu Peak, a lower-grade Foundation Establishment formation. It can even render early Foundation Establishment realm cultivators helpless." Li Xiaowei accepted it with clear delight. The Li family had only just risen to the rank of Immortal Family, and their Foundation Establishment realm formations consisted merely of those on Glacial Cloud Peak and Mount Qingdu. Though the Cloud-Veiling Sky Ascent Formation was not on the level of the Cloud-Gathering Southern Heaven Formation or the Heaven-Guarding Formation of 5 Waters, it was still the most valuable formation on the entire mountain. If not for the capital Immortal Dao, Wenhu would never have had the means to set it up. He examined it briefly before Li Chenghui stepped forward to take it. Li Chenghui said, "It carries the Dao of auspicious essence. This formation may offer some assistance in alchemy and artifact forging." Indeed, the Li family had only exchanged 100 moves or so with the capital Immortal Dao cultivators. With numbers on their side, they had suffered no severe injuries. Only Gbuzhai had hurt his hand, and Nsiwei had taken a palm strike. Both would recover after a few months' rest. Li Xiaowei immediately sent the two to choose cave dwellings on the mountain to recuperate, then stepped into the main hall. Turning to Li Chenghui and the others, he asked, "Two elders, how was the Hidden Cloud territory on your march here? Did the local families cooperate?" Li Minggong answered, "We have taken the peaks, and all Foundation Establishment realm cultivators of Hidden Cloud Cave have retreated. Many at the Qi cultivation realm were captured. In White River Stream, mortals and cultivators live together, so the locals likely do not look kindly on us. As for the esteemed families, we must ask Weizeng." Ding Weizeng immediately stepped forward and saluted, reporting to the family head, the White River Stream territory is home to 4 surnames: Wang, Zhou, Huang, and Ding. They were once esteemed families of Sioux State centuries ago, but after rising and declining, only the Wang and Ding lines still hold foundation establishment realm cultivators. I have already folded the Ding into our forces. The Huang reside in the Brahma Cloud Cave territory. Oh. Li Xiaowei reacted swiftly and asked, the Wang family's foundation establishment realm cultivator, is that Wang He, Wenhu's subordinate? Exactly. Ding Weizeng confirmed. Li Xiaowei now understood why Wang He had been able to become the second in command of Hidden Cloud Cave. Clearly, Wenhu had sought to win the support of the local families. Now that Wang He has joined the capital Immortal Dao and left, has the Wang family of White River taken any action? Li Xiaowei asked, and Li Chenghui replied, the common folk remain unchanged, but most of the direct lineage has already relocated to Bai. This required no proof, it was inevitable. As Li Xiaowei flipped through the register handed to him, he found that quite a few foundation establishment realm cultivators had indeed emerged from this land. Though most had become devil cultivators, it still showed the region's potential. The Hidden Cloud Cave territory was unlike any other. It held over 1 million mortals, and there had never been strict separation between immortal and mortal. The esteemed family's bloodlines were deeply entangled. Each one was a local power, with tens of thousands under its sway. These people were involved in many shady dealings, pulling strings here and there while linking themselves with several powers. After all, Jianbei's spiritual energy was currently flourishing. Floating Cloud Cave, being on the outskirts, was still manageable, but Hidden Cloud Cave truly abounded with spirit items, and these local powers exported them outward. Thus, even the ruthless Hidden Cloud Cave had found it troublesome to take over this place, let alone the Li family, whose governance was stricter. After a single glance through the records, Li Xiaowei said gravely, the White River Stream territory is not suited for establishing peak offices. The conditions here are inadequate. If we forcefully impose them, it will bring at least a century of unrest. The revenues would not even cover stipends, and resentment among the people would erupt. It is better to let them govern themselves for now. It had taken the Li family over 100 years to consolidate control over Moongaze Lake. Even now, their true foundation lay only in the ancestral lands of the southern shore and the forests of the eastern shore. Beyond that, more than 100 families were only loosely bound. On the western shore, numerous families still clung stubbornly to the peak offices, while the powerful Fei family lay on the northern shore. What was more, the lands of Jianbei gained today could be lost again within a few years. Li Xiaowei would never waste his efforts in vain. Li Chenghui strongly agreed and added a reminder. However, the Ding family are cultivators of the Floating Cloud Cave territory. Now that 9 out of 10 households there lie empty, Weizeng's family must be properly resettled. Though the Ding family was an esteemed family, and Li Xiaowei valued Ding Weizeng highly, he had no intention of putting a local power back in place. Since the Floating Cloud Cave territory was vacated, it was better left empty. Smiling, Li Xiaowei said, you've endured much hardship along the way, Weizeng, yet the Floating Cloud Cave territory may not remain secure with the changing times. The Ding family's common folk should be resettled at the Eastern Shore Peak offices, while your immediate kin will be safest on my family's island. This meant relocating the Ding family to the lakeside. Since his own life had been saved by the Li family, and they had released his family from Hongfu Peak, Ding Weizeng could hardly protest. He could only offer his respectful thanks. After all, Li Xiaowei valued him and was mindful of appearances. He did not split the Ding family apart among various peak offices, which would have left Ding Weizeng as the sole remnant. After Ding Weizeng finished giving thanks, Li Xiaowei picked up a brush and said, though we will not set up peak offices or appoint officials here, that does not mean we will let them run wild. First, we'll use each peak as a boundary and station the Jade Court guards. Let them stew for a few days, then grant a few quotas to allow their direct descendants to cultivate in the forests. Li Chenghui acknowledged, and Li Xiaowei continued casually, raise a few of the local power's direct descendants first. Even if circumstances shift in 3 to 5 years and our family withdraws, as long as these direct descendants mature, re-entering Jianbei and consolidating the territory will take no more than a single thought. The 2 others nodded in agreement. They will likely not send their true direct descendants, but instead dispatch some illegitimate branches to Moongaze Lake. Such tricks are ones every family has long since grown tired of. Li Minggong voiced her concern, but Li Xiaowei only laughed and replied, it matters not. Our family will insist on their true direct descendants. We will parade them through the streets, beating drums and offering congratulations thrice over, then spread rumors of their esteemed bloodline. Everyone loves such tales. They will not dare deny it, and in truth they cannot. If our family declares them direct descendants, then they are direct descendants. He did not avoid speaking these words before Ding Weizhang, who broke into a cold sweat upon hearing them. Hastily he excused himself and waited outside the hall while the rest discussed details within, his heart filled with indescribable feelings, so it is true. The devil cultivators act without scruples, but the righteous way is rife with scheming. Chapter 1074, Establishing White River Dispatch Office. Ding Weizhang waited outside the hall until Buzhai arrived. Though the old man bore some minor injuries, he was in high spirits, his wrinkled face blooming with cheer as he hummed a tune along the way. He first offered congratulations, then clasped Ding Weizhang's hand and whispered softly, "I have already finished sorting the land records of the Floating Cloud Cave territory. Once they are presented to the main family, has the Ding family settled their arrangements? Will you be returning to your former lands, or will you choose a new place to settle?" Ding Weizhang understood what the old man meant. Buzhai had just finished organizing the spirit fields, so he surely knew which plots in the Floating Cloud Cave territory were good and which were poor. This was a hint being dropped to him. He only answered steadily, "Senior, my family will be heading to the lake and joining the island for cultivation." "Oh, congratulations." Buzhai offered his congratulations. Since a favored battle general of the main family was being treated like this, he understood that the Floating Cloud Cave's territory would surely be under strict control, leaving no room for private maneuvering. The thought of resettling family members could be set aside. He lifted his robe and walked inside, muttering inwardly, since when did Ding Weizhang become so humble? Back in the Floating Cloud Cave, he even dared to show a thunderous face to Fudu's legitimate son, the cave master's heir. Yet now he is as meek as that Insiwei. In truth, Buzhai had a decent impression of Insiwei. The man was a typical inland cultivator who had relied on fortune, pills, and spiritual aura to pass through the barrier of Foundation establishment realm. Out on the outer sea, his standing would probably be even lower than Buzhai's own. Fortunately, he came from a good family. His father, though inept, pledged loyalty to the Flood Dragon and earned generations of trust. Even Ding Weizhang has to treat him with courtesy. As Buzhai pondered, he raised his eyes. A youth in golden white armor sat at the head seat, head lowered as he wrote. To his left stood another youth in silver armor and a black robe. He was about the same age, his eyes dark and sharp as ink dots as he stood with arms folded. On the right, a palace-robed woman, dazzling and dignified, contemplated while concealing a splendid treasure lamp. These were 3 of the 4 currently most powerful members of the Li family. It was said another managed affairs on the lake, but Buzhai had not yet seen that one. He clasped his hands together and announced respectfully, "I have finished compiling the Floating Cloud Cave territory's records and have come to report to the main family." "Read it," Li Xiaowei replied. Buzhai respectfully recited, "There are 2,051 spirit fields in the Floating Cloud Cave territory, 211 of superior grade, 561 of medium grade, and 1,279 of inferior grade." The Li family's Moongaze Lake was reputed to hold 10,000 spirit fields, yet most were confined to the peaks, and the vast majority were barren plots that yielded just enough to offset their upkeep or lay idle for long stretches. Since each field varied greatly in spiritual energy, speaking of area alone was meaningless. Li Xiaowei merely asked, "Elder, you are well versed in the matters of fields with your Earth Virtue Immortal Foundation, the concealed containment palace. What is your estimate of the potential yield?" Buzhai replied respectfully, "I have calculated everything. The yield should be around 5,000 kilograms, but if the formation plates are fully established and the water veins adjusted properly, it could surpass 10,000. Li Xiaowei mused, "As expected, it is a fertile land." The Li family's rule was strongest on the southeastern shores of Moongaze Lake. Towns lay directly beneath the peak offices, and aside from manpower, all output belonged to the family. The total yield there was around 25,000. Leaving aside Pingya Island, which served mainly as a cultivation ground, the families left by Taoist He on the western shore, and the Fei family on the northern shore each contributed over 5,000. Various others, including the 100 families on the eastern shore, also paid more than 5,000. Altogether, the total approached 50,000, yet this figure of 50,000 was only for accounting. Now that the Li family no longer needed to pay tribute to the Azure Pond sect, not every piece of land was planted with spirit patties. Vast tracts were instead devoted to cultivating rarer spirit items used by Qi cultivation realm cultivators, such as pine yue fruit and lacquer ridge grass. In truth, the yield from actual spirit patties was only about 15,000. This meant that just half of the White River stream's floating cloud cave produced 1/5 of Moongaze Lake's entire output, which was an astonishing figure indeed. Li Minggong sighed with emotion. No wonder so many sects and families have settled in Jiangbei. With such density, only lands like these could sustain them. Li Xiaowei calculated inwardly. Our family controls 10,000 spirit fields and produces 50,000 in yield. That translates to nearly 1,000 spirit stones per year. Yet with our vast household, the number of cultivators we must support is staggering. On top of that, the treatment of our foundation establishment realm cultivators is extremely generous, and the market town has yet to be built. Though life within the family is comfortable, after deducting costs and stipends, the actual surplus each year is not much. It will only come up to 10 to 20%, or less than 100 spirit stones. Though an annual surplus of 100 spirit stones might not seem much, in truth it was remarkable. It meant that every month the family could amass the full lifetime savings of a Qi cultivation realm cultivator. They could fund the construction of a top-grade Qi cultivation realm formation each year, or raise an entire foundation establishment realm grand formation in 3 to 5 years. The only awkward problem was that the Li family had yet to establish a market town. Most of their surplus remained stored within the family as spirit patties and spirit items, which often suffered losses from poor preservation. Spirit stones in Jiangnan were limited, and if they constantly exchanged their goods for stones, they would only drive the price of spirit stones sky high. Still, few would use spirit stones to trade for treasured panaceas. A foundation establishment realm grand formation is difficult to fund solely through spirit stones as well. Li Xiaowei hesitated for a moment. A yield of 5,000 kilograms worth 100 spirit stones was indeed good, but spirit items typically took years to mature. If they lost these lands before then, it would be a great pity. Let Siwei arrange for spirit patties to be planted first. There is no need to refine the formations too much, lest we waste resources if we leave later, said Li Xiaowei. Buzhai nodded and withdrew. Li Xiaowei began to worry about storing the massive harvest of spirit patties and sighed inwardly. Sensing his concern, Li Minggong said, "Now I understand why the Zhao and Yuan families invested heavily to claim vast stretches of spirit lands and poured great expense into cultivating 1 or 2 spirit items. Yet the time they've held these places has been short, making it unsuitable." Indeed. Li Xiaowei said gravely, "Have several of the family's major spirit fields converted to growing white essence fruit. We can make use of the reserves for now." Fortunately, the only troublesome matter was the ruined lands of the floating cloud cave territory. As for the hidden cloud cave territory, only taxes from established families were required, making things simpler. After carefully discussing the details with Li Minggong and asking her to return to oversee matters, Li Xiaowei finally brought the affairs of White River Stream to a clean conclusion. At last he found a moment of leisure. He invited Li Chenghui to sit by his side and asked, "Uncle, what are your thoughts on the cultivators of Bai?" Li Chenghui paused for a moment, then frowned and said, "They will not be easy to handle. I just inquired earlier. The one in the rainbow gown is a direct descendant of Bai, named Guan Lingdi. Her immortal foundation is the same as that of the Lingu family, the South Chu Waters. As for Gongsun Beifan, the one wielding the blade, he was originally a rogue cultivator from Jiangbei who practices Pit Water's Jing Dragon King. He has now joined the Bai capital Immortal Dao. His blade techniques have some merit. The remaining one, the young lady of the Song family, is from a Jiangbei family. This information did not differ much from what Li Xiaowei had guessed. After pondering, he said, although Guan Lingdi speaks fiercely, her combat arts show a certain level of experience. She does not seem simple at all. Gongsun Beifan's Dao lineage is also profound, unlike that of a mere rogue cultivator. As for Song Yunbai, judging by her appearance, it seems Bai capital Immortal Dao does not strictly control its territories. After all, Guan Lingdi was a direct descendant of a Purple Mansion cultivator. She had held off both Li Chenghui and Nsiwei with her own strength, and even managed to wound Nsiwei. Such strength could not be underestimated. Li Xiaowei simply committed the names to memory and then said, "As for Profound Peak Gate, there is truly no one. It is indeed a sign of decline." There was truth in Li Xiaowei's words. Kong Guxi, the head of Profound Peak Gate, had been evenly matched against a mere local power of the Jiangbei Song family. If not for Profound Peak Gate's superior numbers, Bai'ai capital Immortal Dao would have withdrawn much earlier, and the casualties of this expedition would have been far worse. Chapter 1075, Establishing White River Dispatch Office, II. This matter was tied to Taoist Master Changxi, who had repeatedly urged his descendants to break through to the Purple Mansion. The upper evil spirit storage had appeared, and in his joy, several of his direct heirs had gone into seclusion. That was how today's situation had come about. It was also for this reason that Kong Tingyun had later assumed the position of Profound Peak Gate's master and gradually won Changxi's favor, bringing Profound Peak Gate closer to the Li family. One had to admit, there was a sense of destiny in these twists of fortune. Li Chenghui reassured, Profound Peak Gate still has Fu Yuezi on Yuzhu Island. He has considerable strength, and he will be able to contribute when the time comes. Li Xiaowei remained silent for a moment. Chen Yang then came forward to report that the families of the Hidden Cloud Cave territory had already sent representatives, and the initial resettlements had been arranged. At the very least, Hidden Cloud Cave was now under control. With Hidden Cloud Cave secured, we should return to the mountain. I must also meet with the Taoist master. Li Xiaowei put away his brush, and Li Chenghui reminded him, do not forget that the North Brocade River King is still waiting in White River Stream. Ah, yes. Li Xiaowei was still considering candidates for guarding Hidden Cloud Cave. For the moment, he nodded and said, I intend to establish an office in White River Stream to oversee Floating Cloud Cave and guard Hidden Cloud Cave. Floating Cloud Cave is already being managed by Nsiwei, and his abilities are sufficient for that task. But his strength is not enough to hold the post of guardian. Uncle, I fear I must ask you to take this office and watch over this land. Li Chenghui had fought side by side with Li Xiaowei through more than 10 years of peril. The two were well acquainted, so there was no need for courtesy. He nodded, I will do my utmost to protect this place and keep it secure. After a moment of consideration, Li Xiaowei said, since Miffin has been breached and Hongfu Mountain taken, Floating Cloud Cave and Hidden Cloud Cave should be reorganized. Using Manghuazi Mountain as the boundary, rename the southern part of Floating Cloud to Floating South and rename Hidden Cloud to Hidden East. Establish a White River Dispatch Office at Hongfu Mountain. The family will soon send the officers, orders, and directives. He chuckled and added, if these two regions can be held and Floating South begins producing, then future stipends for the office can be drawn from their rear supplies. That will be much more convenient. Though it was also a means to back a puppet, Li Xiaowei wanted to secure the title. It would not be called a gate or a cave, just the dispatch office, so it could be dissolved at any time. After all, their ties with Bai'ai capital Immortal Dao were already severed, and no one expected Hidden East to favor the Li family. It would be a day-to-day duty without concern for long-term recognition. As for the North Brocade River King, Li Xiaowei had already considered this and decided, the North Brocade River King knows many things. He regards me as someone of Dingjiao's princely rank, and I could never go to his mansion to pay respects. If I went, he would become suspicious and overthink it, yet we cannot pass up his assistance. You should go, he will not dare treat you lightly. Li Chenghui nodded, and Li Xiaowei continued, he is not, as rumors suggest, some Dragon Sun-level guest. He is only a minor figure in the Dragon Palace. We must be careful not to let the dragon intervene directly. He can gather intelligence and assist with the water veins, which is already very useful. Keep Buzhai, Ding Weizeng, Maiyashui, and the others under your charge. You cannot manage everything alone. If you need help, ask the clan. Aunt Minggong is on the north shore. Once you cross the river, you are in Floating South, and she can respond quickly. As for Wenhu, Li Xiaowei laughed and said, I will have him taken to Zhaijing Mountain so the families know that Taoist masters are not so easily fooled. Though Wenhu was scheming, he had been unlucky. Li Xiaowei not only intended to seize him, but also reclaim Manghuazi Mountain. Since he had been in mid-stage Foundation establishment realm for years and was about to enter seclusion for talisman work, his eventual breakthrough to late-stage Foundation establishment realm would not be abrupt. The Li family had now risen into a Purple Mansion realm immortal family and was no longer a minor family under the Azure Pond sect. Any disturbance would likely draw the attention of Purple Mansion realm cultivators, making sacrificial rites far from simple. After all, affairs at the foot of the mountain could be hidden as Moongaze Lake's customs, but matters on the mountain involved the secrets of the sacrificial ritual method. If the Purple Mansion realm cultivators detected anything amiss, it would spell trouble. They should have consulted the immortal mirror, but their summons had failed to reveal the mirror itself, since it vanished into the great void. What phenomena might result if they did summon it was unknown. Since the Li family was now the center of attention, Li Ziming and Li Xiaowei dared not be careless and postponed the matter. We should wait until a purple mansion realm formation, capable of isolating the Great Void, can be established before performing the rites. If sacrifices cannot be made for now, at least bring this python back with us. Li Xiaowei continued to ponder as Li Chenghui escorted him all the way to the riverbank. Coming to himself, Li Xiaowei said with a sigh, "Thank you for your efforts, uncle. All these matters are external. Your own well-being is most important. This land can be abandoned if need be. If you were harmed, that would be tearing at the roots of our family." The White River Dispatch Office looked like it carried the authority of a local emperor, but in truth, it was not a good position. Changxi might fall at any moment, and if anything changed within a few years, the White River Stream territory would be the first to bear the brunt. Should the Bai cultivators strike, even a moment's delay in retreat could mean encirclement. Li Chenghui naturally understood this. Steadying his mind, he answered, "I command thunder, and none within the family surpass me in escape spells. With profound thunder in the thunder pool and a grand formation shielding me, if danger comes and I steel my heart to flee, no foundation establishment realm cultivator could force me to stay." After escorting the group and riding the thunder back, Li Chenghui fell into thought. The young man had always been decisive, and he pondered inwardly, "I should make some preparations. Since we can borrow the Dragon Son's prestige to use him, and this Ying Hebai is master of the 3 rivers, with countless riverfolk under him, is that not like laying a net of eyes across the waterways? Once an agreement is set, the moment a glow rises above Bai capital Immortal Dao, some demonic creature will already be rushing to report it here. Though demonic creatures could never match the flight speed of Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators, such matters only required the crushing of a jade talisman for word to spread instantly. With a plan now in mind, Li Chenghui felt more assured. He summoned Ding Weizang and the others to ride the winds to him. After looking them over, he said, "Weizang, come with me into the river." Ding Weizang agreed at once. Soon, they came upon a dark expanse thick with vegetation. That was Manghuazi Mountain. The grand formation guarding the mountain had long been broken, and the demonic creatures had scattered, leaving the place desolate. When the two landed by the river, they saw an old man in black robes manifesting on the riverbank in the distance. He had clearly waited there for some time. He hurried forward and bowed. "Shui Zhao pays respects to the honored lord." Li Chenghui nodded and said in a clear voice, "Has the North Brocade River King invited us?" "Indeed." The old demon Shui Zhao smiled broadly, then crouched down to transform into a massive, ink-black tortoise the size of a house. Brown-yellow markings ran along his limbs, marking him as some unusual variant. His long neck stretched forward, and his voice rumbled like a great bronze bell. "I have long awaited the arrival of your honored selves." Chapter 1076, The Backstory of Mifan I. The waters of White River Stream were the clearest. Its riverbed was paved with dense layers of bluish stones. But the palace that lay beneath the surface was by no means small. Fish and shrimp swam about, transforming into men and women who either played celestial music or carried spirit items, bustling back and forth in lively splendor. Though Ying Hebai amounted to nothing in front of Dingjiao, this jade-necked flood dragon was still a local overlord. His palace was no less luxurious than his due, and was adorned with shining pearls and golden steps. It was filled with dazzling treasures that embodied extravagance at its peak. After all, he is a first-rank demonic creature beneath the Purple Mansion realm, and he reigns as master of the 3 streams with borrowed dragon might. Naturally, he would not be lacking. Li Chenghui understood this well. Ying Hebai might appear meek and deferential, yet without Li Xiaowei's name, he might not have been admitted into this palace at all. Still, the dragon did not put on airs. They rode the tortoise down into the riverbed. Once they reached the palace gates, Shui Zhao reappeared in his true form, bowing deeply as he said, "Please enter." Li Chenghui stepped forward, where a tall man was already waiting inside the hall. He wore an inner robe of stone blue brocade embroidered with fine patterns, over which draped a white fur cloak painted with green seas. Scales grew upon his neck, and his sharp eyes and upright features gave him an imposing presence. Upon seeing Li Chenghui, he smiled and said, "So it is fellow Taoist Chenghui. How is it that the honored lord himself did not come? Our family head has no leisure at present." Ying Hebai immediately understood. Since it was Li Chenghui he faced, there was no need to overly abase himself. He stepped back, revealing boots of turquoise with white soles, and said in a resonant voice, "Please be seated." Li Chenghui took his seat, and Ying Hebai immediately cupped his hands, saying, "First, let me congratulate fellow Taoist on seizing White River Stream territory. The spiritual energy here is abundant, and it lies within my domain. The water veins flow freely, yielding harvests year after year. Should there be any need to divert remote water veins, simply give the word. You are too courteous, great king." Li Chenghui naturally had no concerns regarding water veins, so he said instead, "The White River Stream territory has no lofty mountains, nor any noteworthy land-dwelling demonic creatures. Its only feature is the open water veins, which make it all too convenient for the water clans to go ashore and prey upon humans." Mindful that Ying Hebai was a demonic creature, Li Chenghui spoke with particular clarity. "I will remember this." The North Brocade River King immediately nodded, agreeing readily. He bowed as he said, "I restrain all the waterfolk of the three streams from feeding on humans. As for the lesser generals in remote waters, I will send word of warning. Should any demon go ashore to prey on mortals, if fellow Taoist sends word, I will personally see it investigated." It had to be said, having a background made things simple. The matter that had left the Miffin Three sects helpless, even forcing them to deliver yearly blood food to Mang Huazi, had been resolved by Li Chenghui in just a single sentence. Such a thorny problem solved so easily left Li Chenghui in fine spirits. Taking advantage of the moment, he asked, "Great King, do you know of any special places or hidden matters in White River and Bai? It seems unusual for the Miffin Three sects to choose this land to establish themselves, does it not?" The founding of the Miffin Three sects had always carried an unusual air, so Li Chenghui naturally took the chance to ask. Ying Hebai grew solemn and said, "The White River Stream territory holds its own hidden mysteries. Let me explain them clearly to you. First, let me make clear that my aunt is the favored consort of the Su Water Demon King, and my elder brother serves under him. By that connection, and by making myself known before Lord Ranwu of the Jade Sea and Still Pond Hidden Court, I secured the post as master of the three streams." Having explained his background, he went on, "When the three caves established their sects here, I became suspicious. I made a trip to Su Water to ask the Demon King, and only then did I learn the root lies with the Dao lineage of Mount Zioshi, Mount Zioshi Dao lineage." The name sounded familiar to Li Chenghui. He vaguely recalled that his family had once captured someone from that lineage, so he asked again. The North Brocade River King immediately replied, "Indeed. Mount Zioshi lies near Chengshui Marsh, where there once stood a declining Dao lineage known as Miffin Temple. Back in the flourishing days of Su State, Miffin Temple was an immortal temple under a Purple Mansion realm cultivator's authority. After Wanglin sect's downfall, it rose as one of the leading temples among those under their control. Only now did Li Chenghui understand the origins of the Miffin Three sects of Mount Zioshi. He continued to listen as Ying Hebai solemnly went on. It was said this immortal temple had powerful connections. Later, when its Purple Mansion realm cultivators declined and their heirs proved inept, no sect or family dared touch it. Instead, they incited its own factions against each other, splintering into feuding rivals that merely clung to that single mountain to survive. This dragged on until the conflict between North and South. When monks from the North pressed south, the turmoil finally reached this place. How could the Miffin Caves withstand them? They were instantly shattered, fleeing for their lives, and are now scattered across the world. Stroking his beard, he added, "I once overheard the Great Ones say that Miffin Temple possesses a treasure, an ancient spirit artifact hidden within the Great Void. If any descendant of Miffin Temple can gain its recognition, it will descend from the Great Void itself." Several of the Purple Mansion realm cultivators covet it greatly. Li Chenghui now understood the true origin of the Miffin Three sects. They had been seeded by surrounding Purple Mansion realm cultivators, serving as breeding grounds to select outstanding talents for cultivation, all for the sake of that spirit artifact. The schemes of the Purple Mansion realm cultivators were always difficult to fathom. Though the Demon King's words could not be trusted entirely, the origins of Miffin Temple were almost certainly true. Li Chenghui firmly committed this to memory and replied, "So that is how it is." But thinking further, Li Chenghui realized his family had gravely offended Yi Hui. He brooded inwardly, "I do not know which Taoist masters are involved, but with the Brahma Cloud Cave on the other side, it shows that the Chengyun Gate cultivator has already intervened. This is a matter of great consequence and must be reported to the Taoist masters." Li Chenghui was no longer in the mood for idle chatter. After asking a few details, he went straight to the point. "The people of Hidden Cloud Cave may have retreated, but who knows when they will return. Great king, since you guard the three streams, if any news arises, please inform us. My family will be generous in its rewards. Anyone would know that Hidden Cloud Cave was really Bai Capital Immortal Dao. Yet because the Capital Immortal Dao was an official Purple Mansion Realm faction, speaking its name openly would make things awkward. By calling it Hidden Cloud Cave instead, Li Chenghui made things easier. Ying Hebai smiled and said, "Of course, they are only a few remnant Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators. I will keep watch, and if any news arises, I will immediately send Shui Zhao to warn you." Ying Hebai was no fool. How could he not understand Li Chenghui's meaning? He, too, had strict orders from above not to meddle in human affairs, especially those involving the Purple Mansion realm. Ying Hebai could not openly declare support for either side, but rules were rules. Some things were best left tacitly understood. Li Chenghui's choice of words, calling them Hidden Cloud Cave, made things even easier. The water flood dragon warmly escorted him all the way out as he said, "In the coming months, I will send Shui Zhao several times to maintain contact. That way, if something happens, we can reach fellow Taoists swiftly without delay or mishap." Li Chenghui knew that this meant gifts would likely be exchanged. He would weigh their worth before accepting or declining. Riding thunder, he left White River Stream in haste to send word back to his family. Once Ying Hebai returned to his hall, the smile faded from his face and his brow furrowed as he said, "Shui Zhao, did not a thunder pearl fall into the riverbed during the war between North and South? A pity that treasure is too valuable. He will likely refuse it. Go search the vault for any thunder-tributed treasures instead." Shui Zhao acknowledged and departed. Ying Hebai's heart gradually settled. This man is easy enough to deal with. When the falling water rising storm of the Eastern Sea ends, I must seize the chance to gather a few thunder-imbued gifts to prepare. Chapter 1077, The Backstory of Mifan II, Zhaijing Mountain. Li Xiaowei returned to the family on Heavenly Light. He dismissed his companions, handed Mang Huazi over to the White Ape for safekeeping, and seized Wenhu to meet with Li Ziming. When he reached the mountain's base, a report told him Li Ziming was already at the summit. Relieved, he dragged Wenhu up, flung him onto the radiant square stone, and said respectfully, "This villain dared to offend the Taoist master with deceitful words. Now that Hongfu Mountain has been taken, I have captured him and brought him here." Li Ziming had been waiting atop the mountain and rose with a cheerful laugh. Though the matter had long been planned, and he had blocked the Purple Mansion Realm cultivator from within the Great Void beforehand, how much they gained still depended on Li Xiaowei's strength. He smiled and said, "Good, very good, lock him away first. You and I will talk in detail, and we will interrogate him later." Li Ziming had little desire to control the Li family directly, which was why he was greatly satisfied with Li Xiaowei. Though the Purple Mansion Realm's divine abilities were formidable, the value of a top-tier Foundation Establishment Realm cultivator could not be understated. Why else had Ning Tianxia once gone to such lengths to elevate Li Xuanfeng? If the Li family did not have Li Xiaowei now, how could they ever press into Hidden East? If they only had Li Chenghui and Li Minggong's strength, they would be fortunate just to hold floating south across the river. He helped his white Qilin up and explained everything about Changxi. Li Xiaowei considered it carefully, and Li Ziming said, "I believe Yi Hui must have another scheme. Otherwise, he would not have been the first to stand against our family. That is the first point. The second is, while Changxi still lives and can act as a shield, I wish to visit the Kui family to inquire about their Dao lineage." Li Xiaowei replied, "The affairs of the Purple Mansion realm are not too hard to untangle, especially since the Chengyun and Capital Immortal Dao families behind the Mifan III sects lack a life-divine ability. Much can be guessed with keen intelligence. Changxi may not be ignorant, but rather unwilling to speak, for it touches on interests. If we do not ask, he will not say. Failing that, we could form ties with Sumian instead." What he said matched Li Ziming's own thoughts. Li Ziming responded, "Changxi is a family cultivator who achieved the Dao in the Eastern Sea. He was never a good man. Even as he lies dying, his body stiff, he still guards himself with suspicion. If I were in his place, I might not fully trust our family either. From his perspective, if Profound Peak Gate declines, our family stands to gain the most." These words carried truth. Should Profound Peak Gate collapse and abandon its mountain, its talents, spirit items, and Dao lineage would surely flow into Moongay's lake. Li Xiaowei answered at once, "As for the Kui family, behind them stands the lineage of Dongfang Yu, who are staunch supporters of Ding Jiao. If you seek some information, they should not refuse the Taoist master. This journey will surely bring great gain." Good. That was exactly what Li Ziming wanted to confirm. His confidence rose once he heard that it was tied to Ding Jiao. They chatted about matters of the White River Stream territory, and when he heard the name White River Dispatch Office, he could not help but laugh. How domineering. Its very name carries the taste of bright Yang's autocracy. Li Xiaowei smiled calmly. Li Ziming only jested for a moment before his expression turned solemn, asking, "Do you still have any channels within the Dragon clan? Do not forget to inquire about matters concerning the elder." Li Xiaowei knew this referred to Li Qingheng. He sighed inwardly. The matter was too sensitive to ask casually, yet he nodded silently in agreement. Sensing his hesitation, Li Ziming let his bright Yang divine ability shimmer from his sleeve, piercing through the great void. He left behind one final message. "I have left a profound patterned bottle in the purple flame earth fiend's spring at Zhaijing Mountain for tempering. If there is a need, take it freely." The profound patterned bottle could absorb fire veins, drawing on the powers of radiant fire and bright Yang to refine heavenly light within, thus enhancing its might. After his breakthrough, Li Ziming had left it behind on the mountain. With that reminder, he rose on heavenly light to traverse the great void. Delight stirred in his heart as he anticipated the journey to the Kui family. Before long, the purple mansion realm grand formation of profound peak gate appeared in the great void. Black and yellow currents sank below while dark blue radiance floated above. It looked even more formidable than the grand formation of Xianyu Peak. As soon as he arrived before the formation, an entrance opened up on its own, and Changxi's voice echoed forth, "Each art has its specialty. Gen Earth excels at defense, so a sect's formations will naturally be more stable. Fellow Taoist Jiajing, please enter." He stepped through the formation, and the space opened up before him. In the distance shimmered the dazzling white waters of Lake Xi'an, with wisps of mist drifting over. Li Ziming turned around to find the cave dwelling filled with rolling blue stones. On the central Dharma seat sat a stone statue, its beard and brows like carved jade as they stiffly protruded from its cheeks. The eyes were patterned stone that were dark green and black in color. It was staring blankly forward, a chilling sight. Li Ziming paused as he heard a muffled rumble from within the stone man's chest. "Wait a moment, Jiajing." The stone man rose with difficulty, scooping a handful of sand and pressing it against his face. His features and neck took shape, and the rest of his body was cloaked with robes. Sitting by the table, he forced a smile, though his eyes remained of stone, cold and expressionless. Such an unsightly appearance. Changxi laughed, and the stony eyes slowly grew flesh until his usual features emerged, gentle and amiable. Li Ziming let out a breath of relief and asked, "How is your health, senior? Less than 3 years remain." Changxi shook his head. His condition was truly dire. He said wearily, "Since you have come seeking me, Jiajing, you must have business. Speak." Li Ziming felt as though Changxi might collapse at any moment. Not daring to linger, he asked quickly, "A great war will break out within a few years, and this junior wishes to refine a spirit embryo. In truth, it is not only for those years ahead. If I refine it earlier, it will grant me greater strength in advance." Oh, Changxi looked suddenly enlightened. So he has come to ask me for the method of refining a spirit embryo. At this stage, what excuse could Changxi possibly use to refuse? To be blunt, if he died overnight, would not everything of Profound Peak Gate fall into Li Ziming's hands should he so desire? Which of Profound Peak Gate's secret techniques or spirit items would the Li family not claim? Besides, Changxi had never truly believed in sentimental ties. The Kong family, once a renowned family, had been scattered without anyone remembering bonds enough to care for their descendants. If the Li family was willing to step in, then Profound Peak Gate's inheritance was only rightfully due to Li Ziming as well. The old man coughed, suppressing his thoughts, and forced a smile as he answered, "It was my failing. I promised you earlier that I would give it to you for study. Instead, I've made you come in person. I truly apologize." He drew out a jade slip from his sleeve, coughing as he said, "This text is called Divine Technique of Pavilion View, Refining Within Fire. I obtained it long ago from the Eastern Sea. It is clean and without taint. I have practiced this very refining art myself, so rest assured, Jiajing." "My thanks, senior." Li Ziming received it and immediately swept it with his spiritual sense. The jade slip was of exceptional quality and seemingly reinforced by earth virtue divine abilities. Heavy and solid, it rivaled a Foundation Establishment Realm Dharma artifact. Though small, it contained millions of words, with numerous illustrations as aids. It clearly came from a formal and complete Dao lineage. Chapter 1078, Kui Family of Changzhou I. Li Ziming offered a few words of comfort and then casually asked, "Has Senior made arrangements for the Gen Earth Spirit artifact, the mountain-charging sea-pacing tiger?" If not, you could gift it to Taoist Master Sumian, or failing that, to Taoist Master Xuanyi. Changxi sighed. Clearly, he had planned for this matter long ago, yet he had not found a solution. He answered, I already have another gift prepared for Sumian. As for Xuanyi, other arrangements have also been made. Now those who dare to ask for it would not help me, while those willing to help refuse to accept it. So I still keep it in hand. When my lifespan runs out, I will deliver it to Zhejiang. Li Ziming understood that the chance of exchanging this spirit artifact for assistance from the Purple Mansion realm was almost gone. In the end, it would likely be given to his own family for peace of mind. So he said, Senior, take care. The profound Peak Gate territories are vast. It would be best to recall the island master guarding Yuzhu Island. Changxi knew that his family had no one left, and that Fu Yuezi was the only one capable of managing affairs. He said hoarsely, I have already sent him out and ceded Yuzhu to Jingyi Mountain. Once the matter is settled, he will return. Zhejiang need not worry. Li Ziming sighed inwardly for him but said no more. He nodded, turned, and departed, leaving Profound Peak Gate through the Great Void. He stepped into the Eastern Sea, where his gaze met lights of converging water shining in every direction. As he traveled stealthily through the Great Void, he occasionally encountered towering places, which surely harbored spirit items or spirit water. He broke through their boundaries, casually gathered them, and continued on. Along the way, he obtained 6 Qi Cultivation Realm spirit items and 1 spirit water, the Earth Fiend Cold Spring. A hooked serpent was guarding the area by the Earth Fiend Cold Spring, likely using it for cultivation. When Li Ziming appeared, the demonic creature stiffened in terror, not daring to make a sound. Out of respect for the Dragon Clan's territory, Li Ziming spared its life, took the spirit item, and left. In less than a night's journey through the Great Void, he had already reached the Changzhou Island Void. At a glance, he saw rippling bright yang radiance transforming into a milky white light dome that enveloped the area in dazzling brilliance. Li Ziming was somewhat surprised. A lean camel is still bigger than a horse. The Qi family of Changzhou actually has a Purple Mansion realm formation. Remarkable, truly remarkable. With hands clasped behind his back, he broke through the Great Void and descended on heavenly light to the island's shore. Immediately, colorful clouds converged, interwoven with purple and gold, as bright weather spread. Li Ziming released his spiritual sense, swept it across the area, located a cultivator dressed as a direct descendant, and stepped forward. A moment later, his figure appeared behind the patrolling cultivator, and a burst of intense heavenly light radiated outward, casting a field of white all around. The man turned sharply and his pupils dilated in alarm. Clearly stunned for an instant, he immediately dropped to his knees. His limbs trembled and his face drained of color in terror. His eyelids fluttered and he rasped hoarsely, Changzhou, Qi, Xinjin greets the honored Taoist master. It was no wonder Qi Xinjin reacted this way. He was only at the mid-stage of the Qi cultivation realm, where even encountering a Foundation Establishment realm cultivator was already an awe-inspiring event. To suddenly see the Great Void before him shatter and a Purple Mansion realm cultivator emerge, merely managing to speak, was already proof of his courage. Li Ziming had not expected to frighten him so badly and said casually, Go and inform your elders that Taoist Master Zhejiang of Moongaze Lake has arrived. Qi Xinjin immediately answered in the affirmative, stood up drenched in sweat, and nearly collapsed from exhaustion. He hurried toward the formation and called out at its edge. A streak of flowing light descended at once and manifested into a woman holding a golden ring in her hands. She lowered her head respectfully and asked, Qi Wangking of Changzhou pays respects to the honored Taoist master. Years ago, a senior from Moongaze Marsh once visited. To behold Taoist master's immortal bearing again is a great honor for all of Changzhou. His own aunt had indeed visited Changzhou Island, so Li Ziming naturally understood her words. He merely gave a slight nod and said, This time I came only to reaffirm ties of friendship. There is no need for excessive formality. Upon hearing that he was a Taoist master from Moongaze, and recognizing that he cultivated the bright Yang Dao with the surname Li, Qi Wangking felt an immediate closeness. That was why she came out personally to greet him, speaking gently, Taoist master, this way please. She led Li Ziming into the formation. However, this was only the outer Foundation Establishment realm formation of the island. The Qi family had indeed declined. Though they possessed a Purple Mansion realm formation, it was only enough to shield the core mountain at the center. The rest was guarded by Foundation Establishment realm and Qi cultivation realm formations. Although the Kui and Li families were close, it would not do to expose their heartland to outsiders at the very first step. Li Ziming looked around. Mortals bustled about below his feet. They did not appear overly frightened, most simply lowering their heads and dispersing. The population was remarkably dense, and he gave a word of praise. Changzhou governs its people with great diligence. Kui Wangqing hid her mouth as she smiled, looking faintly joyous as she replying to Taoist Master, the bright Yang Dao is one of engagement with the mortal world. Many of my family's cultivation methods and secret arts emphasize ordering the world while aiding oneself. That is why our numbers are so great. Each year, more than a few cultivators leave, taking family members with them. In fact, most Kui cultivators and families of the eastern and southern seas can trace their roots back to Changzhou. Every 10 years, Kui families from all across the world return here, which is truly a grand event. Kui Wangqing was making Changzhou's status clear. Backed by the White Dragon lineage, no one would dare move against them. For Kui families scattered across the lands, returning here to pay respects to their ancestral mountain was always a blessing. He had just stepped onto the stairs and had yet to enter the main hall when a middle-aged man hurried over. His expression was solemn, with a long mustache hanging down. When he came close, he turned slightly to the side and bowed respectfully to the ground. This junior, Kui Zionai, greets the honored Taoist master. Kui Zionai was somewhat older, yet far less at ease than Kui Wangqing. He seemed to be about the same age as Li Ziming's, but he was extremely restrained, pressing his head against the floor without daring to rise, and said, "My father is currently in seclusion and cannot personally greet you. As the one entrusted with managing the state's affairs, I, Zionai, offer the Kui family's greetings to the honored Taoist master. Rise." Li Ziming smiled as he entered the hall. Kui Zionai guided him to a seat and personally served tea, respectfully saying, "Years ago, the Li family of Moongay's Marsh exchanged letters with my Kui family of Changzhou regarding a senior said to cultivate thunder. Our elders did not know whether it was true, so they did not dare to trust it. Now, seeing Taoist master in person, we know it is indeed the true bright Yang Dao lineage." Li Ziming did not hold the past against him. At that time, the Li family had indeed been obscure and struggling, and even though their situation had slightly improved now, they had only just gained a place at the table. They had not yet secured a Dao lineage back then, so the Kui family had been kind to even share information. He nodded and said, "Indeed, travel was inconvenient back then, so our contact was limited. From now on, we can correspond more often." Those words made it clear that past grievances were forgiven. Kui Zionai let out a quiet breath of relief and bowed again. "Taoist master, thank you for your understanding." Li Ziming said no more on the matter and instead asked, "How many divine ability cultivators does the Kui family have at present?" Kui Zionai quickly replied, "To answer Taoist master, Changzhou Island once had Taoist master Mingzhen, who was my respected great-grandfather, but he passed away a century ago. Several elders of his generation suffered backlash from spiritual aura while in seclusion, and in recent years one after another showed signs of falling. A few years ago, my father also entered seclusion. As of now, there are no divine ability cultivators left on this island. Among the branches that left, a descendant of my great-grandfather's ninth line attained the Purple Mansion realm, with the Dao title Yangya. He has established himself in the far west, in the Western Sea, and seldom returns except for major events." Chapter 1079, Kui Family of Changzhou II. Li Ziming frowned at Kui Zionai's words. The Kui family's bloodline was not weak, and many of their family's techniques could allow one to break through into the Purple Mansion realm. With no external threats and the rich spiritual energy of Changzhou, surely more than one cultivator should have reached the bright Yang Purple Mansion realm. This place was an excellent treasured land, and it was unthinkable that they would fail to produce more Purple Mansion realm cultivators. He had come partly with the hope of seeking allies, so disappointment was inevitable. He asked, "The Kui family has cultivated here for 1,000 years. Surely there should be more than this." Kui Zionai hesitated, then said respectfully, "To report to Taoist master, it was not just great-grandfather. His uncle also reached Purple Mansion realm, but he followed Li Zengquan and perished when the nation fell. My heavenly ancestor too was a Purple Mansion realm cultivator, and he brought along 2 of the most gifted elders to follow Li Xuan, but they also died. During the days of the Dongli sect, Changzhou was part of its territory, and all our family members were summoned back, only to be annihilated. As for how many Foundation Establishment Realm or Purple Mansion Realm cultivators were lost, none can say." He poured tea for Li Ziming and continued, This junior harbors no other intention, only to offer clarity. I beg Taoist master's forgiveness. These words left Li Ziming at a loss. Although everyone said that Moongaze was descended from the Wei's Li family, he dared not openly admit it. He could only sigh and say, the Kui family's loyalty and devotion truly inspire admiration. Li Ziming's tone softened considerably, and he said gently, my Li family rose as a small family by the lakeside, and our Dao lineage remains incomplete. This time I have come first to strengthen the bond between our two families, and second to inquire about the Dao lineage in hopes of filling in a few gaps. Naturally, there will be compensation. Kui Zionai had clearly guessed his intent, since Li Qingheng had already inquired once about the bright Yang Dao lineage. So he said, rest assured, Taoist master, my family has preserved the bright Yang Dao lineage. May I ask, which Dao have you cultivated? Li Ziming was not afraid to let them know. He tapped his teacup and replied, the Heaven Venerating Gate, so it is the Heaven Gate Divine Ability. By Heaven Gate Divine Ability, he clearly meant the entire Heaven Venerating Gate lineage, which included various higher and lower grade techniques such as the Radiant Origin Pass. Seeing his expression, Kui Zionai explained, there are 3 spells as well as 1 body and 1 life ability. The spell divine abilities are the Heaven Venerating Gate, Severed Crimson Arrowhead, and Imperial Observation Origin. The body divine ability is Sovereign in Peril, and the life divine ability is Bright and Clear Heart. Li Ziming only knew that Imperial Observation Origin was the same as his own Everbright platform, and that Bright and Clear Heart was somewhat renowned in the Eastern Sea. He had never heard of the rest. After a moment to digest the information, he asked, do they have other names? Sure enough, Kui Zionai replied, to answer Taoist master, the Imperial Observation Origin has always been an exclusive transmission within the palace, while only a portion exists outside as the Everbright platform. Bright and Clear Heart was known in ancient times as Radiance Under Heaven. Only these 2 have spread widely. As for the countless lower-level Dao foundations, there are many, and I will present a record of them to Taoist master later. Li Ziming's heart surged with joy, and he nodded as Kui Zionai respectfully replied, the Imperial Observation Origin and Bright and Clear Heart divine abilities may only be personally bestowed by the Imperial family, and thus are not available here in Changzhou. We only possess the Heaven Venerating Gate and Sovereign in Peril, the body divine ability Sovereign in Peril. Li Ziming's delight grew boundless as his heart started to burn with excitement. Aside from his greatest desire for the Bright and Clear Heart, his next pursuit had always been precisely a body divine ability. When Li Ziming had first reached the Foundation Establishment realm, he had heard of how formidable such immortal foundations were. From the Yu family's Jade Court General to Ning Tiaxiao's famed Springs Echo, even Sumian could not help but praise Ding Weizeng's Palace Sun Tiger. Add to that Changxi's many mentions of the benefits of body divine abilities, and his heart had long been stirred. In this moment he felt nothing but gratitude that he cultivated the bright Yang Dao and could benefit from the legacy of his predecessors, sparing himself the hardships endured by the likes of Changxi. He nodded with a smile and said, I wish to study it in detail. What price must I pay? Li Ziming knew how precious Purple Mansion Realm techniques were. Back in Hangzhou Dao Gate, the minimum requirement for exchanging Purple Mansion Realm spirit items had always been either Purple Mansion Realm techniques or Purple Mansion Realm spirit artifacts. Changzhou Island was certainly no place to be taken lightly, especially given its deep ties with his own family. Kui Zionai hesitated for a moment, and knowing Changzhou faced no pressing matters, he pondered aloud, to answer Taoist master. Might you perhaps possess a bright Yang Purple Mansion Realm spirit item? Li Ziming had anticipated this very question. It reminded him of his own family's struggles in the past, and he could not help but say with a sigh, I too wish I had such a spirit item. Unfortunately, my family fought desperately to obtain one, and it has already been consumed. Kui Zionai asked again, may I dare to ask, does Taoist master possess a bright Yang Purple Mansion Realm spirit artifact? He paused briefly before adding, we would not dare to ask for a spirit treasure, but only a single spirit artifact. We also cannot accept a spirit embryo to refine into one, for my family has no Purple Mansion Realm divine ability and could not preserve it. Li Ziming sipped his tea and said, I do possess a spirit artifact, but it does not belong to the bright Yang Dao. At this, Kui Zionai faltered. Seeing his difficulty, Li Ziming asked, may I ask, the Dao lineage of Changzhou's Heaven Venerating Gate, what kind of technique is it? Although Li Ziming did not have a Purple Mansion Realm spirit artifact in hand, he possessed a Bright Yang Purple Mansion Realm technique. Trading one for one was not a poor bargain. Qi Xianai replied, "It is the Upper Mansion Bright Venerating Scripture, a 5th grade technique." With 3 secret techniques. Hearing this, Li Ziming grew doubtful. Kang Tingyun had once asked Li Qingheng how many secret techniques the Li family possessed. Li Qingheng had answered, 1, to which Kang Tingyun had replied, "That is already perfectly normal." At the time, Li Ziming thought it was mere consolation. Yet when considering his own heavenly scripture of the Dimming Li Day and Haoshu Golden Book, it seemed to him that even if families did not have 6 or 7, they should at least possess 4 or 5. But now, seeing that even the illustrious Qi family had only 3, while his radiant essence scripture contained a full 9, his heart wavered. For a moment he did not know how to respond. A single thought flashed across his mind, a blessing and a curse alike. He remembered Zhao Shooting's mention of the Dongli secret register, where most Bright Yang techniques were catalogued. His own Foundation Establishment Realm breakthrough phenomenon had long been witnessed clearly by others. And what had he used for his Foundation Establishment Realm? Not the Radiant Essence Scripture, but the Golden Palace Radiant Origin Manual. Only later had he switched to this Purple Mansion Realm technique. Why had Yuan Ziu and the others never seen him as a threat? Surely it was because the Dongli Secret Register recorded the Golden Palace Radiant Origin Manual as a 4th grade technique, likely with only one secret technique, if any. His breakthrough phenomenon had been observed by none other than Si Boxiu. But his later switch to the Radiant Essence Scripture and breakthrough into the Purple Mansion Realm had produced a phenomenon no one could recognize. If he were to trade this technique away now, might the Qi family have records of it? If someone in their family broke through with it, would it be discovered? The existence of the Golden Palace Radiant Origin Manual in the Dongli Secret Register proved that the Immortal Mirror had granted that manual to predecessors. In that case, the Radiant Essence Scripture could very well stir up calamity. The heir's cultivation in the Eastern Sea cannot serve as a reliable reference. These thoughts streaked through Li Ziming's mind like lightning, while Qi Xianai's heart was equally full of turmoil. The Moongaze Li family rose from decline, and though they were fortunate enough to obtain a Purple Mansion Realm technique, it is unlikely to compare with our own Upper Mansion Bright Venerating Scripture, let alone in the number of secret techniques. His silence only confirms it further, thought Qi Xianai. Chapter 1080, Sovereign in Peril. If the Li family's cultivation methods and secret techniques were inferior to the Qi family's, then why would the Qi family wish to exchange for this spell? Li Ziming's hesitation clearly stemmed from this doubt. Qi Xianai immediately realized this and could not allow Li Ziming to feel awkward. He respectfully said, "Taoist Master, my family's Sovereign in Peril technique is only of the 4th grade and accompanied by a single secret technique. How could it be worthy of comparison with your esteemed family's immortal art? Moreover, the Upper Mansion Bright Venerating Scripture is our family's foundational treasure. I would not dare recklessly bring it out without the elder's permission." He made a decisive choice, dropping to his knees and bowing as he said, "This junior is willing to offer up a cultivation method to the Taoist master, only asking for a single favor in return. May your divine ability, brilliant as the sun, shield Changzhou beneath their radiance and protect the Qi family in times of peril." Li Ziming paused slightly, thinking to himself, a single favor in exchange for a Purple Mansion Realm body divine ability. Even if it is merely a 4th grade technique with only one secret art, it is still a Purple Mansion Realm technique. Cultivation in the Purple Mansion Realm was quite different from the Foundation Establishment Realm. Upon breaking through with an immortal foundation, one could not immediately practice the next divine ability. Instead, the current divine ability had to be cultivated to perfection. This process could be painstakingly slow, since one could refine the ability little by little over decades, or it could be hastened by using spirit items, pills, and continuation-type spells to bring the ability to completion. Once that divine ability reached perfection, the cultivator had to begin cultivating the next divine ability. With a Purple Mansion Realm technique, one could condense the immortal foundation within the Qihai Acupoint, then transport it into the Shenyang Acupoint with the aid of one's divine ability. This was not as arduous as the Foundation Establishment Realm, since it was merely a matter of time. Some cultivators could refine pills and swallow another's immortal foundation, then use spells to directly integrate it into the Shenyang Acupoint, nurturing their divine ability that way. However, those like Li Ziming, without such shortcuts, could only rely on Purple Mansion realm techniques and painstakingly train ability after ability step by step. Without these methods, they would remain stuck with a single ability until death. Thus, the importance of such a technique was self-evident. For cultivators like Ning Tiaxiao, who had been trapped in early Purple Mansion realm for years without a suitable method, such a technique could be exchanged for far too much. It might even compel a Purple Mansion realm cultivator to act not once, but multiple times. Though Li Ziming trusted the Kui family, he did not immediately agree. He sipped his tea in silence, while Kui Zionai continued to press his forehead to the floor and said, "The Kui family has dwelled in isolation overseas for 1,000 years, yet our loyalty has not wavered. In the past, the Li and Kui families have often supported one another. Today, as we seek the Taoist master's aid, it is also a matter of long-standing friendship. Our family is protected by the Dragon Clan, so ordinarily nothing threatens our foundations. But should the day come when news of a bright Yang spirit item reaches us, we would beg the Taoist master to lend a hand and assist our family." Li Ziming believed much of this. Outwardly, he nodded thoughtfully and smiled as he said, "It is nothing more than an exchange of favors. So long as it lies within my ability, I will certainly do my utmost to help. The key lies in frequent exchanges between our two families. The rest is merely the duty of kinship. Now that our ties have been renewed, if the Kui family has younger members, they may be sent to train at the lake, while the Li family will also send people to your island." Only then did Kui Zionai rise, step back, and reply, "As the Taoist master commands. The Kui family's juniors of the Juzi generation are at the age of achievement. I shall summon one now for you to see." He turned toward Kui Wonking and instructed, "Go and fetch the scripture of the body-guarding Tiger Pass." Kui Wonking bowed solemnly and withdrew. Then she called another servant forward and ordered, "Bring Juyin here." This series of actions gave ample respect to the proceedings. Even Li Ziming could not help but praise the Kui family's discipline. Soon, a man entered from outside the hall. The man had refined brows that shaded his eyes, and his features were only moderately handsome, but his bearing was elegant and his demeanor scholarly. Upon entering the hall, he first saluted Kui Zionai, then upon seeing Li Ziming, he quickly stepped back and bowed low, "Greetings to the Taoist master." Kui Zionai turned and introduced, "This is the second of the Juzi generation, Kui Juyin. He has been courteous and magnanimous since he was a child, and is highly valued within the family." Li Ziming was in need of capable people at this time. When he saw that Kui Juyin was at mid-stage of the Foundation Establishment realm, a true direct descendant of a Purple Mansion realm immortal family, he felt pleased. Despite the Kui family's current decline, their heritage was by no means lacking. He asked delightedly, "Juyin, are you willing to follow me back to the lake?" Although summoned suddenly, Kui Juyin had already inferred much from Kui Zionai's expression and Li Ziming's tone. The words "the lake" alone spoke volumes. He bowed and said, "To meet the Taoist master and be allowed to cultivate at the immortal lake is the greatest fortune of my life. In awe and gratitude, I accept with joy beyond measure." Li Ziming laughed heartily as Kui Wonking stepped forward with a jade slip and said softly, "Taoist master, the scripture of the body-guarding Tiger Pass, along with its secret techniques and spiritual qi, are all here." She presented a jade tray. 3 jade slips lay beside a jade box. A touch of Li Ziming's spiritual sense revealed one containing the scripture of the body-guarding Tiger Pass, another with a secret technique, and the last with an incantation. As expected of a Purple Mansion realm technique, just the incantation to unlock the scripture required its own jade slip for recording, thought Li Ziming. Since it was a precious item, it was best to verify it on the spot. He did not delay, using the incantation to unlock the scripture and skimming through it. The heavenly radiance profound body divine ability, deriving strength from the bright yang nature and treading in peril, undergoes the descent of the 6 nines to reach the state of comprehension and repentance. The broken clustered heart and the clear manifest will arise thereafter. Once the divine ability is complete, one realizes that treasures are only made whole by flaws, and thus are born the black robe and golden armor, the treasured carriage of the white Luan. At the end, his eyes caught a line that seemed strikingly familiar, shining upon the 8 directions. All kings pay homage, 10,000 spirits bow in reverence, and the heavenly radiance is proclaimed as a heavenly god. These 2 lines were from the casting incantation of his own heavenly radiance, hidden light. So heavenly radiance, hidden light is closely related to sovereign in peril. In high spirits, he turned to examine the secret technique, titled Reversal 100 Formations Battleground Body. After reading carefully, Li Ziming muttered, "Isn't this just my family's reversal? Why give it such a long name?" Li Ziming had read through all 9 of his family's secret techniques before. This Reversal 100 Formations Battleground Body also was pathetically short compared to their reversal. But after reading it once, he froze in astonishment. Unable to resist, he read it again, his mind dazed as he thought, In the past, when practicing his family's secret techniques, Li Ziming had often sighed with regret, lamenting that their versions were original texts. It was so obscurely written that training was extremely difficult. He had even envied sects like the Azure Pond and the Golden Feather, whose sect secret techniques surely came with long, detailed annotations to make cultivation vastly easier for later generations. But now he realized that this was the true original text. His family's version was already a simplified commentary. Reading Reversal 100 Formations Battleground Body made Li Ziming's scalp prickle. If his family's secret techniques were like ready-cooked pastries, then this one was like raw grains with husks still attached. No wonder my cultivation felt so smooth. And here I thought it was my extraordinary talent. Li Ziming let out a hearty laugh, though he felt no discouragement. After all, his family lacked a deep heritage. It was only natural that his attainments could not match those of the main sect descendants, and their secret techniques were bound to be superior. He put away the jade slips, looked at Kui Zionai, and said, "I will accept this spell. If you ever have a request, simply send someone to the mainland."